And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Really appreciate you guys joining us once again for a daily update anyway on what's happening around the world of baseball. The hot stove season is back underway anyway. Lots of moves have been happening over the last couple of days anyway. So let us know in the comments section what you're keeping an eye out for. Itai, thanks for joining us already. Verlander to the Dodgers. They were actually meeting with him via Zoom, I believe, today. The Mets have had meetings with him as well. Not sure if it was the Mets or Dodgers anyway who had the Zoom meeting, but I know one or the other did. It was Rodon anyway to the Mets, my bad. Rodon was to the Mets today as far as that negotiation. Verlander was on Monday. But we're seeing a lot of headlines start to come out. A lot of signings have already happened. The big signing, of course, already this week is Jose Abreu goes to the Houston Astros. Congratulations, Houston, being able to fill that first base hole with pretty much the perfect Houston Astros type of free agent. I mean, look back a few years back to a guy named Michael Brantley who's on the free agent market again. We'll see if Houston brings him back in, but that was the perfect fit at that time. Jose Abreu is in that same kind of a vein, and the one surprising thing about the Astros negotiations with him, they did it without a general manager. The owner, Jim Crane, envisioning himself as kind of a Jerry Jones type, to handle the negotiations himself and was able to bring him in and get the deal done. But that's kind of the big transaction today, or yesterday anyway. But we've seen a number of smaller transactions take place over the last couple of days. Winter meetings are going to start on Sunday evening. So make sure you guys join us here at the Upside. Hit that subscribe button and stay up to date on all of the transactions from Major League Baseball's hot stove season. We will be live for you guys throughout that entire week. Putting out short videos as well for those of you who have to work and only can watch it in short little snippets. You can check out the short, and if it's something that interests your team, like say, the Aaron Judge suddenly decides to leave the Yankees and go to the San Francisco Giants, we'll put out a short little video and then immediately go live. That way you guys can get the entire breakdown of what happened, the contract details, who's next, what the Yankees are going to do if something like that were to happen. There's a number of big name free agents on the market this year. The pitching options, of course, Jacob deGrom, Justin Verlander, Carlos Rodon, Kodai Senga, Chris Bassett, Taijuan Walker. There's a number of good quality starters out there on the market this year. However, not necessarily the quality that there has been in years past. So we could see these starting pitchers come off the market fairly quickly as teams try to be aggressive and keep them or try to bring them into their own fold. But thank you guys for joining us. Got about 10 of you guys with us right now. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, we're getting closer and closer to our 1,000 subscriber goal. We're, I believe, 51 away. So if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do so. It really does help us out. Please and thank you. So again, we already mentioned the Jose Abreu signing, 3-year contract to the Houston Astros. We put out a video about the Mike Clevinger signing to the Chicago White Sox. If you guys want to hear about the Chicago White Sox rotation, they have a really good 1 through 5 in their rotation. They're kind of counting on Clevinger to be that number 5 option to fill in that spot that Johnny Cueto held last year. If he gets anywhere close to his career numbers before the surgery, you're looking at a very good signing here. And the White Sox were long expected to be in the postseason last year. Of course, they weren't able to manage to stay healthy the entire year. Poor performance in that starting rotation. They started to battle back a little bit in the second half, and did look a little bit more like the Chicago White Sox that we expected coming into the year, but they never really got their feet underneath them. Going into this next year anyway, they're not going to have Jose Abreu. Andrew Vaughn's going to kind of take over that first base role. Eloy Jimenez could be deployed in left field or as a designated hitter. I'm expecting a bat to go in there to the Chicago White Sox. Maybe a platoon type option there. Maybe a backup like a Brandon Belt type at first base. Maybe an outfielder they could use as well. But free agency is going to be fantastic this year. Not to mention the trade market. We're finally seeing some trade talk finally start percolating out there, and we'll see which trades ultimately end up happening. Now, as I mentioned, there's a few good starters on the market, yes, but of course the starting rotation, the starting pitcher trade market is also very alive as well. We've talked before about Pablo Lopez, about the Miami Marlins. There's a number of other starters that could move. Looking at the Seattle Mariners, they have Chris Flexen that could possibly go. They have Marco Gonzalez who could go. Say they get Kodai Senga, they could trade both of those starters to get some other help elsewhere. The Mariners are also expected to trade outfielder Jesse Winker, who absolutely crushes right-handed pitching. At least he did up until this past season. He's not very good against lefties. Kind of picture him as the Jock Peterson of the American League. Crushes right-handed pitching, not so much against lefties. So we'll see, which team decides to go with kind of a platoon type of situation there. Teams that could use a guy like Jesse Winker, anybody who needs a left-handed outfielder. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays just traded away Teoscar Hernandez to try to make themselves a little bit more balanced, righty and lefty. It doesn't look like they're in the market for a guy like Jesse Winker per se. Otherwise, they probably would have gotten him back in that Hernandez deal. But the Giants are known to be needing outfield help. The Rangers are known to be needing outfield help. The Chicago Cubs, the Reds could use pretty much anybody in their outfield right now. There's a lot of teams out there that could use a left fielder of Jesse Winker's quality when he's healthy and when he's actually hitting the ball like he has in the past. But last year was an abomination for him. We'll see if he can correct it going forward. The Mariners are expected to be interested in Brendan Nimmo, Andrew Benintendi as well. They've also been in recent talks with Michael Conforto. Now, you might remember Michael Conforto from his days with the New York Mets. Did not play at all last year, was not signed to a team. Remember, he got that qualifying offer from the Mets, decided to hold out and thought he would sign at the trade deadline. Apparently, he wasn't healthy enough then to sign with the team, even though his agent claimed at the time, oh yeah, he's ready to go. That apparently was not the case. Well, now we're still seeing headlines about, hey, is Michael Conforto actually healthy? He had a very similar surgery to the one Bryce Harper just had. Bryce Harper is expected to heal a little bit better. It's more of a clean injury for him from what we've been told, at least through media reports. But Michael Conforto is still on a throwing program. Supposedly he's getting full extension on his swing, according to Scott Boras. But that was the headline about the trade deadline as well. I mean, if he wasn't swinging or having full extension on his swing at the trade deadline, why were we being told that he was? That's what I would have a question about if I'm a team interested in Michael Conforto. And if I'm the Seattle Mariners, I've got two really good outfielders. I want to finish that off with another just kiss on top, cherry on top piece, chef's kiss type of player in left field, or corner outfield spot anyway. You have Julio Rodriguez and Teoscar Hernandez. You don't exactly want to start somebody there who's going to be, 25th in the league in left field. I'm sorry, you just need a little bit better production out of that spot. And they've got a really good team. Mariners have a chance to do something this year, especially make some noise in the postseason. They finally broke that long drought that they had of not making the postseason for 21 straight years, back since 2001, back in the days of Ichiro Suzuki, that fantastic 100-plus win team. That was a great team. This past year, though, they finally got it all working together. Luis Castillo was signed to an extension right around the end of the season anyway, and they basically invested everything they could last year to try to break that curse, or break that streak anyway, and they finally accomplished it. Congratulations, Mariners fans. But there's a lot of moves going on around Major League Baseball. Headlines out of the Boston Red Sox state that Nathan Eovaldi and Matt Strome are possibly nearing a conclusion as far as their contract negotiations. Whether that be with the Red Sox or Orioles, that wasn't made clear in the report, but it sounds like their market is heating up considerably. Pittsburgh Pirates, not exactly known for being a free agent destination. Apparently they're heavily involved in the Kyle Gibson sweepstakes. Of course, the Philadelphia Phillies, they've been in talks with the free agent shortstops for the better part of a month now. Xander Bogaerts Trey Turner as well. Probably the two most likely options there at shortstop to go there. Remember, Bryce Harper is expected to be out at least past the All-Star break, so we'll see, how that motivates them to try to sign one of those top free agent shortstops. I fully expect them to sign one of them. In fact, I'd probably expect them to sign Trey Turner. I'd put that number at about 90% certain that Trey Turner is the shortstop that they're going to end up getting. The Chicago Cubs are expected to be heavy bidders in the shortstop market. They're originally expected to be in on Dansby Swanson and try to outbid the Atlanta Braves. The price for the Atlanta Braves may be getting out of their price range, so we'll see if that ends up happening. But it sounds like the Cubs' first choice is Carlos Correa. Now, of course, Carlos Correa came from the Houston Astros system, was able to reach free agency last year. Jeremy Pena was ultimately the shortstop there in Houston. They ultimately won the World Series. Correa ended up in with the Minnesota Twins, signed a 3-year deal, $105 million with an opt-out after the first and second year. He decided to go ahead and opt out and try to take another stab at free agency. He was very disappointed, we'll say, in his free agency the last time around. He was looking for Corey Seager type of money that he signed with the Texas Rangers, 10 years, $325 million. I don't think that's out there even this year for Carlos Correa. We'll see if it is, but maybe he's going to get somewhere around the 10-275 that he turned down from the Detroit Tigers. We'll see what his market ends up being. But the Twins are said to have multiple contract offers out on the table to try to retain him. They have a 1-year offer, a 6-year offer, an 8-year offer, and a 10-year offer on the table to Carlos Correa. We'll see which offer he ends up getting. Now, as I mentioned the starting pitching market. That market could move very quickly here at the beginning of the winter meetings. We told you over and over and over again this offseason that the New York Mets have been trying to get things done very quickly this offseason, much like last year. Remember, they spent a lot of their time quickly in the offseason working with Starling Marte, Mark Canha, Max Scherzer, trying to get those deals done. This year, they've already re-signed Edwin Diaz pretty much within the first week of free agency on a 5-year, $102 million contract. Best contract ever for a closer, by the way. They're looking quickly to try to lock up Jacob deGrom and Brendan Nimmo. Those contracts, they were at least hoping to have one of them locked up before Turkey Day. Well, we're obviously after Thanksgiving now, almost a full week now. Winter meetings are right around the corner. If you're one of the other teams that's in the market for a Jacob deGrom, you have to be emboldened by that. I mean, there's no other way to slice it. The Mets are trying to lock up these key free agents and then turn around and still add other pieces. They could, of course, still do that. I mean, Steve Cohen is their owner. They have pretty much a blank checkbook. But if you're a New York Mets fan, you got to wonder, is Jacob deGrom really going to stay? Or are we starting to see these other visits with Senga and Verlander and Rodon as more of backup plans once deGrom decides to leave and go to LA or Texas or wherever else he might want to go? It sounds like that could be the option that ends up happening here, but the Mets are still going to field a very good rotation. They do have 3 holes in that rotation, though. DeGrom is a free agent, Bassett's a free agent, and Walker is a free agent. I fully expect them to fill that rotation with some good options, though, so don't worry if you're a Mets fan. You just may lose DeGrom, but you'll still have some good pieces there in that starting staff. Rangers fans, I am a Rangers fan, just to kind of be clear about this one. There's a lot to be excited about. I mean, you signed 2 of the top 5 free agent shortstops out of last year's class, invested a lot of money, and yet you're still willing to add another $60 to $75 million in payroll to this season to make sure you're competing for a playoff spot. That's fantastic news if you're a Rangers fan. I mean, they've got Josh Young, the top prospect, finally ready and healthy to take over at third base. Nathaniel Lowe took over at first base this past year and kind of took off, won the Silver Slugger Award in the American League for first baseman. Great job there. Their catching situation, they've got Sam Huff and Jonah Heim. They seem set there with young options there. Outfield, they of course have Adolis Garcia, kind of a guy they took off the scrap heap, if you will, of the St. Louis Cardinals. In center, Leodis Tavares. The one hole they do have in their offense, left field. Now, of course, they had league worst offense out of that position last year. It wasn't even close. Well over 100 OPS points below the next worst team in the MLB. They have to address that. They've been mentioned as a suitor for Michael Conforto. They were last year as well. They're mentioned as a suitor for Mitch Haniger. Some trade possibilities, and of course the reunion of a possible Joey Gallo coming in and solving that spot as well. Pretty much any of those options would be better than what they had last year. I understand they were trying to use a young guy at the very end with Bubba Thompson, but nobody they put out there in left seemed to get any type of traction for the Rangers. They're going to have to solve that. But most importantly for the Rangers, of course, is that starting rotation. They're trying to add at least one ace-level pitcher. They already brought back Martin Perez on the qualifying offer. They also made a trade with the Atlanta Braves to bring in Jake Odorizzi to only cost them $2.5 million for a number 5 starter. great option, by the way. John Graves should be healthy this year, so there's at least 3 starters already locked in for next year, not to mention the starters that they already have within their system. Dane Dunning, Taylor Hearn, etc. They could turn to them if they don't get one of those top options out there to kind of fill out that rotation. And also, we put out a video yesterday, I believe, talking about the trade possibilities for the Rangers, that they have a couple of good middle infield options, Ezekiel Duran and Josh Smith, that are drawing significant trade interest from other teams. Now, if you're wondering, hey, I've heard those names before, it's because you have. A couple of years ago, back when Joey Gallo was a member of the Texas Rangers, he was traded to the New York Yankees for a package that included 4 prospects. 2 of those were Ezekiel Duran and Josh Smith. Those 2 pieces could be one of the options that bring back a left fielder or a closer, but the Rangers are certainly going to be big factors at this year's winter meetings. Let us know in the comment section what you think they're going to do, but as far as I'm concerned, I think they're going to at least bag one of the starting pitchers out there, possibly 2, and try to double dip. One thing I've noticed about the Rangers is they like the strategy of not just getting 1 top option, but getting 2. You remember a couple of years ago in the MLB draft, they got Jack Leiter. They were very interested in a starting pitcher named Kumar Rocker. Well, in this year's MLB draft, who did they select? Kumar Rocker. They like to double up. Last year's free agency, they bring in Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, doubling up on the top free agent shortstops in the class. Yet again, I think they might try to do the same thing here. If they're able to afford 2 ace-level starting pitchers, I think they're going to try every single thing in their power to be able to get that thing done. And if they do, what a shockwave that would send through the entire Major League Baseball. They would have a top 5 rotation. Say they get a guy like DeGrom to be their ace, and then they bring in Rodon. Then your 3 is Perez, your 4 is Gray, your 5 is Odorizzi. I'm sorry, put that starting 5 of that rotation up against anybody in Major League Baseball, and I'll tell you, the Rangers will be right there. And of course, their offense should be much better pitching staff. Pitching coach is better as well, with Mike Maddox coming on board. Bruce Bochy, a much better manager as well, better than Chris Woodward and Tony Beasley. Sorry, as good as you guys were last year, or lack thereof. Anyway, Bruce Bochy is a World Series champion anyway. Manager of the year in the past with the 1996 team from the San Diego Padres. He's a great manager. They were able to talk him out of retirement after being away from the game for 3 years. The shift is going away, so that'll be a little bit different for him to have to deal with. But Bochy is definitely one of the best managers in the game. If I remember correctly, he's the 3rd oldest manager in the entire game right now, and that seems to be the trend teams are going with. Older managers are having success again, so we'll see if this brings some success to the Texas Rangers. Anyway, enough about the Rangers. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Of course, everybody wants to talk about Shohei Ohtani. Don't talk about Shohei Ohtani. It's all about trying to keep him around and not trade him away. So that's why they brought in Gio Urshela and Hunter Renfroe, Tyler Anderson. They tried to bring in Martin Perez from the Texas Rangers. They're trying to make some significant pieces. Just today, they brought in Chris Davinsky, who spent time with the Arizona Diamondbacks and Philadelphia Phillies last year. If he gets back to the level he was at anyway with the Houston Astros, that's a solid bullpen piece for the Los Angeles Angels. They need to add some veteran leadership on that team because they haven't really gotten any productive players out of that roster in the last couple of years. I mean, they tried to bring in Anthony Rendon. As to say the least, it's not gone well. They tried to bring in Noah Syndergaard on a 1-year, $20 million deal. Ended up trading him away at the deadline because they were so far out of contention. The other thing is you just want to keep Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani healthy. If you do that, you should have a chance to at least be competitive for a wild card spot. But again, that starting rotation, they still need to add at least one more piece. Bringing in Tyler Anderson after only 1 year of success, whereas he had 5 previous years of an ERA over 4.5, makes me wonder if he's really discovered something in LA, or if it's just one great fluke year. Every single pitcher just seems to have one really good year, but his was just a little bit extra special, which is why he got the big deal. I just wonder if it's a little bit of a fluke. We'll see if he continues that level of success, though. Of course, we already mentioned the Boston Red Sox a little bit anyway. They apparently were one of the suitors for Jose Abreu. They're going to have to add some bats to that lineup. They're trying to tinker around the edges and stay competitive in that AL East. It's going to be very competitive, especially if Aaron Judge leaves that division. Then we're talking about complete anarchy in New York. Boston, of course, sees the opportunity. Tampa Bay is going to be Tampa Bay. They're going to be good year in and year out. And then, of course, the Orioles are on the upswing. They got a lot of good young prospects. They're actually looking to add guys like Nathan Eovaldi, some middling starting pitchers to try to add some veterans to that starting staff to make them a little bit better as they try to call up some of their young talent. They should have a lot of good young players up in the major leagues by around the All-Star break, so we'll see how that roster looks. Adley Rutschman, their catcher, was playing at an MVP level over the last 2 months of the season. If he was a little bit more of a name anyway in Major League Baseball, if he had started the year a little bit better, then he probably would have been right up there with Aaron Judge. But Aaron Judge by far was far and away the best American League offensive player this past year. Led in 19 out of 20 major categories on offense for the American League, and that's why he is this year's big whale that everybody's trying to chase. New York Yankees, we put out a whole bunch of videos about the chase for Aaron Judge from all different sides. From the Yankees side, the Giants side, we've talked a little bit about the Dodgers as well. The Aaron Judge signing could happen early on in the winter meetings. A lot of talk is out there that the big names are already in the market for Aaron Judge. They've already started speaking with him. He's had face-to-face meetings both with the Giants and Dodgers now. So we'll see how things end up happening for Aaron Judge. Winter meetings begin Sunday, as I mentioned, in San Diego. So Aaron Judge is already in California. At least he was for Turkey Day. We'll see if he's actually going to be at the winter meetings. That'd be very interesting to have him have that signing there at the winter meetings. We'll see if a team tries to steal the show of the winter meetings by having him sign that contract there on the podium from the winter meetings, kind of a pedestal, if you will. But a lot of headlines going around. Verlander, as you mentioned, Itai is one of the other headlines to kind of keep your eyes peeled for. It sounds like the Houston Astros are prepared to move on from the reigning Cy Young Award winner. He pitched to a 1.85 ERA, I want to say. Pitched in 28 games, was absolutely fantastic, and of course overcame the World Series bugaboo. Just never really seemed to have a good performance in the World Series until this year. Now he is 39 years old, I believe. He's the oldest of the big starting pitchers on the market. He did have a big injury a year and a half ago. Finally came back and had a great year this past year. But again, that's just 1 year after the surgery, and he's 39. How many more years of this level of success is he going to have? Well, it's been stated that he wants to have Max Scherzer level money. By the way, that's $43 plus million dollars. And it sounds like he wants a little bit of length out of that deal as well. So we're not talking about a 1 year contract at that type of a number, or a 1 year deal at 50 even. We're talking probably about a 2 or 3 year contract, probably in the neighborhood of $45 million. DeGrom is looking for something similar, but I imagine he's looking for at least 1 more year than a guy like Justin Verlander. Now, of course, DeGrom came back and pitched very well. Wasn't exactly the same Jacob DeGrom that we knew before the injury, however, but was still very effective. Year 2 and year 3 are always better after the Tommy John type of surgeries anyway, so we'll see if any one of these teams that are in his market view that as kind of a perk if they don't necessarily worry about his injuries. They say, hey, his arm's actually going to get stronger now that he's had more time from the surgery. Maybe that's entering the thought process of these teams. When you're entering in to negotiations with a free agent, you're always seeing, the sunny side. You want to, you want him to hit those career high numbers. You want him to continue to get better. But it doesn't always work out that way. So buyer beware on some of these injury issues, especially with those starting pitchers. The one, probably the most secure starting pitcher out there on the market, Carlos Rodon. That wasn't the case a year ago. Everybody had questions about his arm, whether he could hold up for 200 innings. Last year, he takes a 1 year plus an option deal with the San Francisco Giants, and continues with ace level performance and doesn't wear down at all throughout the season. He was fantastic. Pitched to a 2.88 earned run average, I believe. He was great. San Francisco is going to have a bucket of money to spend this offseason, and if they don't bring in a guy like Aaron Judge, they could, of course, try to keep their own guy in Carlos Rodon and maybe bring in a shortstop as well from the likes of Bogarts or Correa. But we'll see how that market develops. But Carlos Rodon is going to have a very wide market this year, probably a little bit wider than you might expect. For instance, the Minnesota Twins have been mentioned as a team that could be in the market for Carlos Rodon, possibly as a backup option to Carlos Correa. Not saying that they'll get both, but it sounds like they're viewing starting pitching as the primary need after Carlos Correa. Got 11 of you guys with us right now. Really appreciate it. If you just hit that like and subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. Trying to get closer and closer to that 1,000 subscriber mark, so if you wouldn't mind helping us out, we would really appreciate it. News in just the last hour or so. The LA Dodgers are signing Shelby Miller to a major league contract. Looks like it's going to come with a $1.5 million base salary, a good cheap option for them to have in their bullpen, kind of a 7th, 8th inning guy and spot starter when they need him. Welcome back, Robert. Okay, what do you think they'll do at the winter meetings to make you think the players will sign there? Well, it's more about the teams and just the conversations that I've already had already. The big names that are out there, For instance, Aaron Judge's market is clearly defined. The big teams are already in there. They've already had their meetings. They already know pretty much the framework of what it's going to take to get Aaron Judge done. And I think one of these teams is going to want to take, the headline grabbing move of, dominating the winter meetings. This is the winter meetings of Aaron Judge, or this is the winter meetings of, Jacob deGrom, or this is the winter meetings of all the shortstops that are out there. Doing pretty good, Bryce. I know this is baseball rated, but USA men's soccer game, yeah, it was pretty great. I got to watch the tail end of that game. Pulitz's goal took a cleat to the rib anyway. I think he broke a rib or something like that. So we'll see if he's good to go for their next game. But they advanced because of that goal. They had another goal taken off the board just before halftime. It was a good game. So if you guys are watching the World Cup, good on you. If you haven't, you're missing out. I'm telling you, it was a good game. We also saw Candelario, the Tigers free agent anyway. He was non-tendered by them, signed a one-year deal. I didn't mention this earlier, but the Pittsburgh Pirates have already signed Carlos Santana to a one-year, $6 million deal to take over at first base. We're seeing some first basemen kind of come off the board. Probably the best first baseman left right now in free agency is Josh Bell. We'll see where he ends up going, but the San Diego Padres are going to need a first baseman. I wonder if they're going to bring him back because he did not have a good second half of the season anyway with the Padres after the trade from the Nationals. The Red Sox seem like they're in the market for a first baseman as well, so we'll see where he ends up going. The Giants, of course, no longer have Brandon Belt. Maybe they could have a fit there for Josh Bell. The Nats are going to have a good team probably in another year or two. I just wonder if they're a little bit early to try to invest at the top of the market this year. They're going to have the money in about a year, they pretty much have the money already, but they could be a big spender in free agency in about a year or two. They have a lot of good young prospects to kind of build off of, but they need some veterans around them. I'm just not sure Candelario is a good fit, just because I wonder if they need a better, more veteran voice in the room. Candelario has not been on a winning team. He hasn't been around winning. So I wonder if he's really the right guy to bring into the room. Whereas, for instance, the Pittsburgh Pirates, Carlos Santana has been on winning teams. So that's why I think the Santana signing is a little bit better than the Candelario signing. What's the Benintendi market looking like in your prediction? Well, we know that his market is actually pretty big. A lot of teams need left-handed outfield hitting. So you're looking at the Mariners, the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Giants. The Rangers could use him. The Royals could even bring him back. The Cardinals could use him. The Red Sox. His market is pretty big, and I think he's going to probably wait until Brendan Nimmo signs somewhere. I think Nimmo's probably the linchpin for the rest of the outfield market. There's not a lot of good outfielders on this year's market. But once Nimmo does move, then I think we see Benintendi come off the board. If I had to give you a prediction right now, the Blue Jays just seem like a very good fit as far as what they need from him. A good contact hitter, left-handed hitter. The Mariners make a lot of sense, but I wonder if they're looking for a little bit better piece than Andrew Benintendi. The Giants could be a nice piece there, but of course they already have Jock Peterson in that spot. So if I had to make a prediction right now, I'd probably lean more towards the Blue Jays. I think the Yankees, while they're going to try to bring back Aaron Judge, I think they're looking at Benintendi as more of a plan B to Yoshida or any number of other outfield options that they could bring in either via free agency or trade. I just don't think the experiment worked fantastic last year with Benintendi. And of course, they already have Harrison Bader there in center field as well to work with. Kind of a similar stature of a player, but I think they might want more of a contact type of hitter out there. Benintendi is a very good contact hitter, but it just didn't seem to click there in New York. What do you think the Yankees do if they re-sign Judge? Well, if they re-sign Judge, that means they convinced him that they're going to do more this offseason. That means they're going to add at least one starter. That means a trade for probably a guy like Pablo Lopez we speculated about over and over and over again. That means they're going to have to add another contact hitter in the outfield. That means they're going to have to unclog that middle of the infield anyway. They have too many middle infielders on the roster right now. We could see Torres or Isaiah Kiner-Falefa or Cabrera or Peraza moved in that Pablo Lopez type of deal. But I think they need to add at least two starters this offseason. I just don't think their starting depth is nearly what it's been in the past. I could say the same thing about the Dodgers. If they get Judge, they still need to add rotation help. Same thing for the Giants. They could use another starter as well. The one interesting part that we haven't touched on too much is that shortstop market. Xander Bogaerts is kind of the forgotten man along Dansby Swanson in this year's free agency class. However, Xander Bogaerts is one of the top 5 hitters in the last 5 years as far as in the entire game. Just the ability to make contact, get on base, score runs. He's been fantastic. The only two other players to hit at his level in the past 5 years, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, both of which are already on the LA Dodgers. Got to wonder if the Dodgers see that as a formula for success, and they're going to have to lengthen out their lineup there in LA. The top four in that lineup pretty much did all of the work last year. They got rid of Justin Turner, they got rid of Cody Bellinger, and so they're going to have to fill in some holes there. But they do a little bit of work here by bringing in Shelby Miller. Appreciate you guys joining us. In case you guys are new to the Upside, we cover Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL. I just put out a video about the Dallas Stars committing $67.6 million over 8 years to their young centerman, Rope Hintz. You can check that video out on our YouTube page after the live here, but really appreciate you guys joining us. Of course, the NFL, there's a lot of headlines, of course, going around about Odell Beckham Jr. Got a whole bunch of videos about him right now. You're welcome to check those out. Sounds like the Dallas Cowboys have emerged as the clear favorite. Giants taking a little bit of a backseat now. The Bills are still trying to remain in that market, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs. And then in the NBA, all eyes are, of course, on the LA Lakers and just their inability to, well, win games, really. They blew a big lead last night against the Indiana Pacers. We'll see what that means for Anthony Davis and LeBron James as we get closer to the trade deadline. And it sounds like there's a 5-team trade in the works. You can check that out, including that includes the Golden State Warriors and Phoenix Suns, the Atlanta Hawks as well. So we'll see what happens there. Thoughts on Don Mattingly going to the Blue Jays as their bench coach? Mattingly is a great manager. He's been in some really tough situations to manage, and he's done an admirable job of it. That pitching staff he handled very well with the Marlins last year. Alcantara, of course, out-pitching pretty much everybody in the entire league last year. 227 innings or something like that, I think he ended up with, just because the Marlins didn't have much talent offensively or at the back end of that bullpen after the trade deadline. He made it work as best as he could. But Mattingly should be a very good hire for the Blue Jays. I like what they have going on there. They fired their coach last year. The interim manager, Schneider, I want to say is his name, ended up removing that interim tag. He will be the manager. Getting somebody experienced to be his bench coach like Mattingly, very good position there. And, of course, he's very familiar with the AL East, of course, playing with the Yankees for all those years. Well, I know you're a Yankees fan, Bryce, but there's a lot to worry about if you're a Yankee fan. I mean, Aaron Judge is the sun, the moon, and the stars right now for the entire Yankee offseason. If they lose Aaron Judge, I'm just wondering what exactly they're going to do. I mean, there's so many different ways that onion could unfold. I mean, if, say, Aaron Judge goes to San Francisco, well, that means they're immediately going to need another star-level player in the lineup. There isn't really one readily available on the free agent market unless you're willing to go for a shortstop, and that would completely derail your plans as far as for Volpe or Peraza. You still need to add pieces to this team, especially when you consider that they didn't even make the World Series last year, and that was with Aaron Judge. They need to improve the team, not just get it back to where it was by re-signing Judge. So we'll see which option they end up going with. The one option I put out there is the dark horse trade candidate being Fernando Tatis Jr. Maybe you trade for Tatis Jr. as that star-level player, somebody who could at least take the spotlight of an Aaron Judge in New York. But again, he's been a little bit of a head case anyway with the San Diego Padres. And it's not going to be cheap to get him. Brian Reynolds, I'm not sure. Just to kind of answer your question, I don't know if Brian Reynolds is available. Do you think Philly will sign starting pitchers as well? I believe they will sign at least one starting pitcher to take the spot of Noah Syndergaard and Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson looks like he's on his way to Pittsburgh, but they're going to add some back into the rotation starters for sure. Chris Bassett could be in the mix there. They could, of course, trade for some, but they don't have really top-end level prospects to trade for a guy like Pablo Lopez anymore. The Marlins pretty much picked their system clean with the Real Muto deal a couple years ago. But we'll see which options they go with. But the Phillies are going to have to sign at least one free agent starter. I'm expecting somebody in that middling range, like a Chris Bassett, Taijuan Walker. As far as back-end options, maybe a Wade Miley, options like that. Drew Smyly might make some sense as kind of a number 5 swingman type of a role. But as far as the Brian Reynolds talk with the Pirates, while I think he'd be the most valuable center fielder if he were to be available, on the trade market anyway, I just don't think the opportunity is really there for the Pirates. I understand they're not in a winning situation. They don't really have a long contract They don't really have him locked up for a considerable length of time. I think they've got, what, 2 years left on his deal, something like that. But while he would be a very good option for pretty much anybody as a center fielder, I'm just not sure he's the right piece for any team out there right now. One, because of what it would take to get to bring him in via trade, and for the Pirates, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you consider most of their talent is about ready to hit the major leagues within the next year to 18 months. That's the Pirates' timeline as far as when they next expect their chances to contend are going to be. The Central is very winnable over the last couple of years as well. The Brewers, while they have a great rotation, they haven't really been able to sustain it for an entire 162-game season last year. The Cardinals, while they were great in the second half, were up and down in the first half. The Cubs are kind of going through a transitional phase of their organization. They could invest heavily this offseason, or they could sit on their money for one more year. We were just talking about the Cubs. Do you think Ian Happ is on the trade market? I think he is. I think he should be on the market at least, and I think they're going to try to bring in at least one corner outfield bat, like a Cody Bellinger, Michael Conforto type, something like that, to kind of solve that spot. Remember, they just got rid of Jason Hayward as well. Maybe he latches on with the team somewhere on a minor league type deal. But the Cubs should trade Ian Happ. I think they need to reinvest that capital that they have there. He'd be able to get you, a third or maybe a number 3 or number 4 starter in the rotation. Maybe a couple of prospects if you decide to go that route instead of going for a starting pitcher. But I think there's enough outfielders that are similar to Ian Happ on the market this year that could give you similar production. If they have a good year, or if they get back to their normal production like a Joey Gallo or a Cody Bellinger, then you're looking at a significantly better player than Ian Happ. So that would be something I'd keep my eye out for. Welcome in, Mark. Jays have an abundance of catchers. Might they swap one of them for an outfielder like Nootbaar or someone else? I see somebody else was watching MLB Now. I was watching MLB Now today, and they were discussing the possibility of, or was it Hot Stove? Anyway, it was one of the two, that they could move a guy like Danny Jansen to the St. Louis Cardinals and fill their catching need for the acquisition of a Nootbaar. I think that would work very well. I think John Paul Morosi mentioned that one this morning on Hot Stove. But I think they will move one of their catchers. If I were them, I would rather move Alejandro Kirk. And while I know he's a fan favorite, I just don't know if he's going to be long-term successful there in Toronto. One, because I think they're going to have to move Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at some point in the next 5 years over to designated hitter. And at that point, you're still going to have Alejandro Kirk on your roster because he's going to have that big of an impact on your roster. I think you'd be good or served better to go with a younger guy like Moreno and maybe a good defensive catcher like Danny Jansen as opposed to Alejandro Kirk and reinvest that bat somewhere else. Now, could you get what you're needing as far as a major league level talent back in return for him? Probably not, but maybe move him somewhere and then you use those prospects to bring in somebody else via trade. But I do like the trade route as an option for the Blue Jays. They've been more than willing to do that in the past. But I just wonder if they would invest in a guy like Brandon Nimmo instead, or go after a Cody Bellinger. We're going to make a video about that later on this evening about their interest in both of those players. Brandon Nimmo, obviously the better of the two at this point in their career, had an over an 800 OPS last year, was absolutely fantastic for the Mets, and is the only really good option on the free agent market for center fielders. And if you want to move George Springer out of center, that would be one option to do it. You're ready for some move to happen this weekend. I believe it will start to heat up knowing that teams are aware of the price it will take to get that type of player. Exactly. That's what everything seems to be happening about right now, is that we're getting a lot of headlines about teams meeting with these top free agents out there, that we're getting a lot of these, information, dotting our I, or crossing our T type of information done before the winter meetings, before they travel to San Diego. Once they get to San Diego, I think you'll get a lot of trade talk, and of course the Hall of Fame induction, or the Hall of Fame announcement on Sunday night. We will be live for you guys once we get that news as well. Which of those 8 players ultimately gets into the Hall of Fame, if any of them. There's 8 players on the ballot this year for the ERA committee. Dale Murphy, Don Mattingly, Fred McGriff, Rafael Palmeiro, Albert Bell, Kurt Schilling, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens are on the ballot this year for that ERA committee. We'll see if any of those get in, but we should see a lot of trade talk anyway over the next couple days, as well as teams try to get a feel for what the market looks like. Once teams are actually able to negotiate face to face, you notice a lot of those talks happen a lot faster. Is Verlander a Dodger? Not as of yet. I just think he's going to wait until the DeGrom news settles first, because I think his preference would be go to the Mets if DeGrom is out. Say DeGrom goes to Texas. Then if Texas is really serious about doubling down, maybe they get Verlander or Rodon. That would be one thing. But if DeGrom leaves the Mets, that means they are serious about going after a guy like Verlander, Senga, or Rodon. I think they will get at least one of those guys if the Mets lose DeGrom. Tommy Kahnle market is heating up. Yeah, there's a lot of talk right now about the sixth, seventh inning reliever, fourth, fifth starter in the rotation. Those type of pieces right now are trying to secure major league level contracts. That way, they're not left without a deal as they get closer to spring training. We saw this a little bit last year before the league kind of shut down via the lockout. And we saw a rash of signings pretty much a couple of days before December 1st last year. Last year, today, 1 year ago today anyway, was the day the Texas Rangers signed Corey Seager to that 10-year, $325 million deal. They spent about $500+ million in contracts just before December 1st, so we could see something like that over the next few days. Do you think Verlander will be a Dodger? If DeGrom stays with the Mets, then I think Verlander is probably either in Texas or a Dodger. I'd probably put it 60-40 that he ends up in LA. If DeGrom goes to Texas, I'd say it's probably 80% certain Verlander's going to go to the Mets. That's what I would put it at, Itai. I don't know if you're a Dodgers fan or a Verlander fan or an Astros fan, but to kind of give you the breakdown of the market, he's waiting for DeGrom. If DeGrom stays with the Mets, I'm 60% sure he's probably going to go to the Dodgers. If DeGrom leaves the Mets and he goes to Texas or wherever else he might want to go, the Mets are going to have a need in that starting rotation. I think their first choice would be to bring in Justin Verlander anyway, and that would probably be the perfect answer to losing Jacob DeGrom. Then, of course, doubling down on that starting staff by bringing in Chris Bassett again, or Taijuan Walker, or Carlos Rodon. But they're going to have a hole in that starting staff if they lose DeGrom, and I think they'd try to use Verlander to fill it. If you're a Dodgers fan, if you get a guy like Aaron Judge in your system, that would be fantastic. Mookie Betts moves to second base in that scenario. Then Gavin Lux moves over to short. Or do you trade Gavin Lux, bring in one of those big free agent shortstops as well, and then use Gavin Lux as a piece to bring in another starter, a number 3 or number 4 type starter, and then go out there in the free agent market and add another starter? Do you think they'll really let Bonds into the Hall of Fame? I'll put it this way. Everybody, year after year, talks about whether or not Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and all the other PED and steroid guys should be able to get into the Hall of Fame. How about let's change that conversation a little bit? How about we stop talking about whether or not they're worthy about for the Hall of Fame every single year and give players who actually are in the Hall of Fame their due? I mean, for the last 10 years they've been on the writer's ballot. Now this is the first year after, and what's the first thing we're talking about? Not the players that are on the new ballot. No, we're talking about the era committee ballot because they're the guys on the ballot. Now, they were Hall of Famers when they were playing, absolutely. Was that due to PEDs or not? Who knows at this point. Probably some of it yes, probably some of it no. But at this point, we are taking way too much time talking about these two players in particular, especially when there's a whole bunch of other players who at that point in time were using PEDs, and I think it does a disservice to the rest of the Hall of Fame not to talk about those other players and continue to talk about Bonds and Clemens and Schilling and Rose for all the issues why they're not in the Hall of Fame yet, as opposed to those players who are in the Hall of Fame. So go ahead, put them in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. Put an asterisk next to their name. Put a disclaimer next to their head or to their plaque in the Hall of Fame. I don't care at this point. I want to see those other Hall of Famers get their due. I want to see Fred McGriff get into the Hall of Fame. Don Mattingly, more of a peak performance guy. If you've watched MLB now, he had that injury-shortened career. He was a fantastic player in his own right. He should be in the Hall of Fame as one of the peak performer type of Hall of Famers out there. Then the other players who are already in the Hall of Fame can get a little bit more publicity as well. You know, the players that have been inducted in the past, like, Craig Biggio of the Astros has had a great career with them. We're talking about, Nolan Ryan as a Hall of Famer. All these other, Sandy Koufax, we talk about them as kind of comparisons to players that could be in the Hall of Fame, and that's about it. We don't really say, hey, Sandy Koufax, we still understand you're a great Hall of Fame player. Let's give you your round of applause once again. Let's continue to keep talking about those types of things. But yes, Mark, I absolutely agree. Fred McGriff is definitely a Hall of Famer. I'm shocked he's not already in. Larry Walker, who was inducted, last year or the year before? I can't remember when he got in. Congratulations for getting in. But that entire lead up to that was all about Bonds and Clemens. Would they be able to get over 75%? Not, hey, Larry Walker's really had a great time really risen in the voting anyway, and has finally been able to get into the Hall of Fame. We had a nice little blurb about that, but then the rest of the conversation, the rest of the night, is all about Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and I'm frankly sick of it. Whether you're a fan of them or not, whether you want them to get into the Hall of Fame or not, the fact that we continue to talk about them getting into the Hall of Fame year after year after year after year, and understand that it might not happen this year, and they might not be on the ballot next year because they have to wait for that era committee ballot again. If we are still having this conversation at that point, that's a mistake for Major League Baseball. They just need to get it over with. I'm sorry, it's gone on way too long. It just needs to be over with. They need to. I don't want to say I've got fatigue from watching this whole conversation go on, but whether or not you believe, Barry Bonds was clean up until the Summer of Love with McGwire and Sosa, and then that's when he decided, hey, these guys are using steroids. I need to use steroids so I can become even better than them because I was better before they used this stuff. Well, I'm sorry. At this point, we just need to stop having that conversation. We've been discussing their careers more than anybody else, and they are not Hall of Famers as of yet. Curt Schilling, whether you agree with the stuff that he says on Twitter or not, whether you believe he's a good guy or not, whether you believe the morality clause or the character clause is one of the important pieces of going into the Hall of Fame, his career speaks for itself, even with those character concerns. It's about honoring that baseball career, his ability to help end that streak, or the curse anyway, for Boston. Very important for them as well. And the bloody sock game, heck, that's in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't Curt Schilling at this point? And it's all because of character clause, or whatever. I would rather stop talking about those issues and stop wondering about whether or not this guy was, okay with the morality police. I would rather just get them into the Hall of Fame, put their asterisks or whatever you want to next to them because it's part of the narrative. You have to explain that. But once you get them in there, you can start to honor these other players. Fred McGriff. I mean, everybody who has been trying to get those clean players in, he is the champion of those clean players. Those inflated numbers the steroid guys got that made 500 home runs look like nothing, made Fred McGriff's career look like nothing because of all those inflated numbers. He was a great first baseman for over 15 years in Major League Baseball. Consistent, contact hitter, line-to-line hitter, home run hitter as well. I think he hit like 390-something home runs. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, the success he had in his career, and he was able to play every single day. I mean, we need to start honoring careers like that and stop wondering about, is it correct or is it right or wrong to put Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens in? I'm done with it. Bush Girl, welcome in. Welcome back, Cheesy. Matt Cain to Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's, good enough as far as career-wise or length-wise to be able to go into the Hall of Fame. Do I think he'll get a vote or two? Possibly. Do I think he could fall off the ballot as well? I do think that's a distinct possibility. I know there's a lot of good careers out there. Even to be on the ballot is a very good honor, and those players should have their day. But then there's the Hall of Fame. And are we talking about Matt Cain as one of the top 20 pitchers in the entire league to ever play the game? I don't think so. Are we talking about him as one of the top 50? I don't think so either. I still think he was a very good pitcher for a couple years there. He was fantastic. But now you're good. You're good, Robert. But I just can't get there for Matt Cain. Do I think he deserves his day in the sun and everybody to say, hey, what a career, congratulations, glad you're on the ballot? Absolutely. But do I think he's one of the top pitchers ever in Major League Baseball history, worthy of Hall of Fame induction? No. Hall of Fame consideration? Sure. But how am I doing today? Doing pretty great. Got a lot of transactions out there. Hockey, we actually had a extension anyway with the Dallas Stars, my favorite team in the entire world. The Dallas Stars are my favorite team above the Rangers, above the Mavericks, above the Cowboys. My Dallas Stars are my bread and butter right now. Jason Robertson leads the entire NHL in goal scoring, by the way. Just in case you guys thought Connor McDavid was it. He's right there with him. But yeah, the Barry Bonds talk is certainly getting old, and I'm frankly sick of these other players not getting their due. But hopefully that'll be over as of Sunday, and then of course all the talk shows will talk about it Monday. What does this mean? When will be on the ballot next if they don't get in? Now that they got in, what does this mean? And what does this say about all the other PED guys? That'll be the conversation for about a day or two, and then it should stop. Glad you brought that one up, Mark. The Astros did sign Jose Abreu, but before that, Jim Crane, uh, around the trade deadline, was having a conversation with James Click. Basically, it got out to reporters that Jim Crane basically was pounding his fist on the table to bring in a guy like Wilson Contreras from the Chicago Cubs. They really wanted to have him in on that roster, and that didn't happen. They made the trade for Christian Vasquez instead. Everything seemed to work out. They won the World Series, but Jim Crane didn't exactly see eye to eye with James Click. Only offered him a 1-year deal. Click, of course, declined because he's a very good executive. 1-year offer after winning the World Series is kind of a slap in the face. Even if you didn't bring in every single player that was on that World Series team, it was still a slap in the face for his accomplishments that he had there while he was in Houston. So Jim Crane is basically functioning as the team's GM right now. Good choice bringing in uh, Jose Abreu. I wonder how quickly a deal for Wilson Contreras gets done now. I wonder if they want to bring in that type of a bat. They could, of course, turn to Michael Brantley as well, but I wonder if they're going to get Wilson Contreras. I know they're going to add at least one more offensive player as far as a backup catcher. Christian Vasquez, of course, played there last year. I don't know if he's a great fit, though. Thoughts on Jordy Ben, Leafs fan here? Jordy Ben's a great veteran defensive, very good defensive defenseman, if that makes sense. He's not going to give you, 10, 15 goals a year, but he's good for, 2 or 3. But he plays shutdown defense, very good penalty killer as well. I think he just got injured not too long ago, if I remember correctly. So I believe he's out of the lineup for now. I believe they had to put him on IR, if I remember correctly. They have 3 defensemen injured right now, but the Leafs, they're going to have to add a defenseman. They're probably going to have to add a goaltender as well around the trade deadline. But to answer your questions about the Leafs, they're a very good team. They're very offensive heavy, though. That was kind of the decision they made by going the John Tavares route years ago. But they need to clean that up a little bit on the defensive end. Are the Astros probably going to still get Contreras too? I believe they should add one more offensive catcher. Whether or not that's Contreras or not, we'll see if that happens. With Jim Crane running the show there in Houston, I wonder if he overspends a little bit on Wilson Contreras, with the agent for Contreras kind of taking advantage of him being new to contract negotiations. While he's, I'm sure, a great businessman outside of baseball, I'm sure he understands that he's not exactly a scout. He's not come through the ranks and been a baseball guy all these years. He is an owner. He pays people to do that for him. Now that he's not paying that, he has to do it himself. And while Wilson Contreras has been great and could be a great fit in Houston, I fully expect them to overpay at that spot now. Yeah, you're not going to like this one, but cheesy. I was debating whether or not to release a video about, is this the year that the Leafs finally get out of the first round of the playoffs? I don't think you would have liked that video very much because they haven't gotten out of the playoffs, gotten out of the first round of the playoffs in what, almost a decade now at this point, it seems like. It's been a while, and yeah, I'm not sure this is their year either because, again, the defensive issues, and again, I don't trust their goaltending. Let me flip this around for you guys so you guys can see the screen for just a moment. There we go. In case you guys are new to the Upside Sports Network, one site you can always use to read up on more information is MLBTradeRumors.com. It's a free site. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to go behind a paywall to see any of that stuff like other sites make you use. But they're a very good, kind of an impartial site. At least they've tried to stay impartial. You can still see kind of their hometown bias every now and again in the articles that they write. For instance, one of them's a big St. Louis Cardinals fan, and anything American League or Texas related, Houston or Rangers wise, it's a complete, like, not so great move for them kind of a thing. But it's a very good site to kind of stay up to date on all the information. I know it's very difficult to follow beat reporters for every single major league team out there. For instance, I know a lot of you guys out there may be Red Sox fans, maybe you're a Yankees fan, but I follow those beat reporters for you guys. That way I can get you guys all the information. That's how I found out about Nathan Eovaldi and Matt Strahm possibly having their free agency wrap up here soon. Nathan Eovaldi, of course, got the qualifying offer from the Red Sox. The Orioles have touched base with him. A number of other teams like the Rangers have also Been in connection with Nathan Eovaldi as well. Pretty much anybody who's in need of a number 3 type starter, a veteran to come in and at least eat some innings, has been in contact with Nathan Eovaldi. That is one contract we could see actually happen before the winter meetings happen on Sunday. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. But make sure you follow us here at the Upside Sports Network on YouTube. At the bottom of the screen, down at the very bottom, you can see my Twitter handle, at UpsideSN. If you guys want to follow there, anytime I post a video, a short little video out, I'll put it on there as well. That way you guys stay up to date there and can watch that video when you're at work, get a minute on your lunch break, whatever the case may be. I know a lot of you guys didn't request off for the winter meetings like I did last week, so I'm going to try to keep you guys up to date as much as possible. Winter meetings are a lot of fun, a lot of transactions happen, so we're going to try to stay up to date with pretty much every single thing that happens. You might notice that the short videos are usually between 15 seconds to 60 seconds. We'll give you a short little information as far as, what the transaction is. We'll say, for instance, Aaron Judge signs with the San Francisco Giants. The contract length, how much money, what it means for their lineup, what it means for the Giants, what's their next steps, what it means for the other suitors that were in the running for them, like the Yankees and the Dodgers, that kind of thing. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Hey, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Got a subscriber there. We broke 950. So we're getting close to that 1,000. Really appreciate it. Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for joining us from Ontario. We do put out some videos for you guys. So Canadian teams, the Toronto Blue Jays, we put out some videos on the Raptors from last season. We'll put a video out later on this year for those Canadian fans up there. But a lot of hockey, of course. But thanks for joining us, Mark. Really appreciate it. But as I mentioned, we broke 950 as far as subscribers. We're 50 away from finally hitting our 1,000 subscriber goal. So if you haven't hit it, please do so. It really does help us. Thank you very much. But as you can see on my screen, we already mentioned the Shelby Miller deal there. Close that ad. Can't stand ads, unfortunately. There was the Candelario deal with the Nats we were discussing earlier today. He got a one-year deal, $5 million. And it looks like he got another $1 million in incentives as well in that deal. I'm not sure this is a great signing for the Nationals. They do need to add some veterans. I'm just not sure he's the right veteran to bring in. I think they should have brought in somebody from a winning team like the Pirates did with Carlos Santana, trying to teach their younger players how to win in Major League Baseball, how to prepare, how to keep your body in shape, how to eat right, how to take care of yourself, how not to play video games till 3 a.m. after a game and then go back to practice, 7 a.m. the next morning. That's not the way to do it. Carlos Santana with the Pittsburgh Pirates is going to be able to teach those lessons to those players. Candelario, they're going to need veterans like that in Washington after trading away a number of their veterans on that roster over the last couple of years. They need some veterans that can instill good habits in their young players, and I'm not sure he's the right piece to do it because he came from a losing system. So, maybe process is his thing. Maybe the Nats see something in him, but I'm not sure that's the greatest fit in the world for the Nats. Cheesy, we lost 4 game 7s plus a game 5 in the bubble. I don't understand how you lose 5 series-defying games every year. Looks like these players are tired. I know the regular season doesn't matter. If you're a Maple Leafs fan, all I can say for you is once you get to the postseason, that's pretty much all it is. In case you're unfamiliar with hockey, the Maple Leafs are basically the Yankees of the NHL as far as the fandom for it. That is what the team the country pretty much supports more than any other. Don't get me wrong, a lot of fans of the Canadians and the Sens and the Jets and the Canucks and the Flames are out there. But Canada's team is Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's why there's Maple Leaf talk shows on national broadcast, not Canucks talk shows on national broadcast. And the way they've managed to lose series in the postseason over the last 5 years or so has gotten a little absurd, to say the least. And I think they only have themselves to blame for it because of the way they built their teams. Very offense heavy. But again, their defense this year especially is lacking even more so than it has in the past. And they haven't gotten off to a fantastic start this year either. We'll see if they can get things corrected and bring in a defenseman or two. The Edmonton Oilers, for instance, are very top-heavy on offense right now with McDavid and Draisaitl. They need to bring in a defenseman or two. Honestly, I think they need to at least bring in 2 defensemen. But that's kind of your NHL talk there for you. As I mentioned, the winter meetings are coming up next week. We'll be. I already took off of work for you guys, so if you guys are stuck at work and needing to stay up to date on all the latest from the winter meetings, make sure to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. We'll keep you guys updated on what's going on. There was the news, of course, that the Mets met with Carlos Rodon via Zoom, I believe. Remember, if they don't sign Jacob deGrom, they are expected to bring in at least one free agent starter from outside of their organization. This Sunday is the beginning of the winter meetings. Yes, Bryce, this Sunday. We are less than, 5 days away? Sunday evening is when we'll start with a live, probably around 6 o'clock in the evening. I know Sundays are all about football and that kind of a thing, but it's going to be about the winter meetings for me pretty much from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday till end of Thursday night, I believe. But we'll be live with you guys right when the winter meetings coverage starts on MLB Network. Try to get you guys updated on all the latest from Judge, deGrom, Verlander, Correa, Bogarts, Swanson, Haniger, Nimmo, Jansen, Rogers, any one of these top free agents out there. And then, of course, the trade talk that's out there right now. Pablo Lopez of the Mariners. There's a lot of other teams that are also calling about trade possibilities. Jesse Winker of the Mariners is probably the most available outfielder right now. So if you're looking for kind of a cheap outfield option on a one-year type of option or one-year type of a deal, maybe Jesse Winker's the guy for you. Yeah, I'll be out. We have down here in Texas, out in Canton, Texas. There's a place called First Monday Trade Days. It's kind of a flea market type of thing, but it's if you were to put Walmart in one on a pavilion, basically, there's like 30 Walmart-sized pavilions out there as far as the flea market, and that's just one area of the flea market. There's another, 10 Walmart size across the street, another 5 across another street. It's a big area. So that's what I'll be doing in the morning, trying to get some exercise, walking around out there, clearing my head before hunkering down for about 3 hours, getting updated on everything for baseball, and then going live with you guys at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. We will probably be live with you guys all the way from about 6 o'clock 6 o'clock Sunday evening until probably about 10 o'clock. But yes, I'm in Texas, about 2 hours east of Dallas. If you guys were paying any attention to Major League Baseball, their website anyway, ticket sales, Black Friday sale, $10 a ticket, etc., on a number of different teams. I actually bought tickets to go to 5 Rangers games next year. Don't know how I'm going to fit it into my work schedule and into this YouTube schedule, but I'll figure it out. $10 a ticket wasn't too bad, so I bought tickets to 5 games, especially having to drive back and forth 5 different times. But some of those were bobblehead nights. You can't miss those. One of them is even a to-be-determined bobblehead night. Say the Rangers end up getting Jacob deGrom, that could probably be the bobblehead night for Jacob deGrom bobblehead. So I wanted to make sure I was going to be there just in case they did sign Jacob deGrom, and that turned out to be the bobblehead. And then I did buy tickets for the Dallas Stars game as well. Rope Hintz just signed that big contract. He's actually going to be the bobblehead for March 23rd, so I'm going to be at that game as well. From New Jersey, okay. New Jersey's not a horrible place. I mean, every place has their bright spots, don't get me wrong. But they also have their bad, so don't get too hard on them. You love your Vladdy bobbleheads? Well, I think you're safe to keep them around for a long time. I don't think you're going to have to worry about another team plucking away Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You're not going to have to worry about that kind of thing. Remember when the Expos lost their team? Vlad Guerrero ended up going to the Angels and then to the Rangers and then the Orioles. And then that kind of thing is kind of how his career ended up. He was their star player for years, stolen base guy, then turned into a little bit more of a lumbering guy at the end. But I think you're safe in Toronto keeping Vlad Guerrero Jr. I don't think you have to worry. But again, I know you're a Blue Jays fan, so let me ask you about that. If you're a Blue Jays fan, would you rather, A, have them trade Kirk, bring in some top-level prospects, or possibly bring in a star of equal caliber to Kirk, or would you rather go a little bit cheaper by trading away Jansen and bringing in a nice everyday major league player like Nootbaar from the Cardinals and go that route. So for just kind of equivalency here, say you trade Kirk away to, I don't know, a team that needs a catcher. Those prospects you then turn around into a number 2 or a 3 type starter, or you turn into, a very good, number 4 or 5 hitter in your lineup. Which way would you rather go? Trade Jansen for Nootbaar or Kirk, who is going to take over that DH spot here within the next year or two from Vladdy, and Vladdy's going to have to stay at first as his defense starts to wane as he gets older. Which way would you rather go? To kind of future-proof myself, I would rather keep Jansen, sign him to a modest long-term deal, 4, 5-year deal, maybe 3 years if you're not comfortable giving out that length, and then keep the young guy there, Moreno. And sure, he might be a little bit less splashy offensively, but I mean, you've got Bo Bichette, you've got Vlad Guerrero Jr., you've got George Springer. You're going to bring in one of the best outfielders on the free agent market, like a Benintendi or a Bellinger or a Nimmo. You should be very good offensively. So I wonder which way you'd rather go. I would rather keep the defense first guy in Jansen than the offense first guy in Kirk, especially when Kirk is going to have to take over DH and make my defense even worse in years 2, 3, 4 if they kept him. Check on some of these other headlines. Only name I recognize out of this, the Tigers re-signing Brendan Davis. I believe he was a Rangers farmhand years ago, brought over in the Yu Darvish trade. Obviously never got anywhere. There's the announcement of the deal. $6.725 million for Carlos Santana to go to the Pirates. We talked about that one a little bit. Guardians apparently were in on Jose Abreu. There's the first time I've finally seen the numbers on it. 3 years, $58.5 million. So roughly $19 million plus for Jose Abreu. You think you'd trade Jansen behind the plate defensively? You'd be worried. So far, we have not seen Moreno being able to hit consistently, which is a worry. Sure, but I mean, if you're splitting time with Jansen and Moreno, you can allow him to, play in more opportune positions for him. Kind of do a platoon, righty-lefty type thing until he gets a little bit more confidence. And I imagine he's probably playing winter ball somewhere. I would hope he is, at least, if I'm a Blue Jays fan. And hopefully that hit tool is a little bit better. But I mean, you have a lot of hope in Moreno. His prospect status is right here, right now. I mean, at some point, you can't just stunt it and let him stay in the minors. You're going to have to bring him up at some point. And if you bring it, or if you still have Kirk on the roster, he's going to be behind the plate because you don't really trust Moreno at that point. You're going to want to put him in the lineup more. You're willing to keep Vladdy at DH at least this year. Then, as you notice, defense starts to wane. Then you move Kirk next year to DH. Moreno, whether he's ready or not, has to take over the position. I'm not sure if that's the best move long term. I would rather keep Jansen and trade Kirk, but that's just because of the DH spot and how it limits your organization going forward. We haven't talked much about the Cincinnati Reds, but they did bring in Luke Maile from the Cleveland Guardians. He was the backup catcher there last year. Signed a 1-year deal there. The MLBPA Executive Director, Tony Clark, did get a 5-year extension. I don't like talking too much about the business of baseball as far as the MLBPA and that kind of a thing, but just basically know this. Tony Clark, of course, leads the Players Association. They still need to hammer out details of the international draft. The players, of course, are trying to show their solidarity behind one common leader, especially with the older leaders of their own leadership phasing themselves out, like Max Scherzer. How much do you think Senga will sign for? I would probably guess somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $75 million, maybe a 5-year deal, $75 million, something like that. He's a very good starting pitcher. I believe this is probably his one real bite at the apple. I don't think he's going to take a short-term, high AAV type of contract. So if you're hoping to get him on a 2-year, 2-year, $35 million deal instead. I don't think that's the route he's going to go. He's 31. He pitches to contact a little bit more than the average major league hitter, or excuse me, average major league pitcher. A little bit different way of attacking hitters, and we'll see how effective he is once he comes to the States. But I'd expect 5 years, $75 million. Where is the better question? There's pretty much every single team in the league has at least talked about Senga. There's probably a quarter of the league that's probably serious about his chance or about their chances of bringing him in. How much would it cost? Again, 5 years, 75. Pretty much any of those teams could bring him in. The Mariners have talked about bringing him in as a fifth starter. The Mets talked about bringing him in whether to get DeGrom or not. The Dodgers have talked with him. The Giants, the Rangers, the Padres, I believe, have talked to him. The Cubs as well. The Red Sox, of course, could use some starters. The Orioles could use a mid-rotation starter, a veteran type. Maybe they decide to make a splash like that. They haven't been connected to him yet, that I've seen anyway. But that would be a good get. But I don't know. I don't think there's a real favorite in the clubhouse for him. I think he probably wants to go somewhere where he's going to be comfortable in a winning situation, much like Shohei Ohtani did a few years ago. Well, a few years ago, several years ago now. We'll see where he ends up going, but 5 years, $75 million seems about the right number. There's the Davinsky deal that we were talking about earlier. One thing I haven't mentioned, Detroit Tigers great Miguel Cabrera, probably bound for the Hall of Fame at some point. This will be his final season this year. Kind of a lumbering guy over the last couple of years. Really has fallen off, but he's still a very good contact hitter. But he's definitely seen his better days, and hopefully he has a resurgent final season like Albert Pujols. But that's kind of the rare exception, not the rule. But it's good to see him finally get one last go around, to kind of a tip of the cap to him for a great career. As I mentioned, the Luke Maile signing, backup catcher choice there. There's the Michael Conforto news we mentioned, that they've been in talks anyway with the Mariners. The Astros are a little bit of an interesting team there, just because I'm not sure he's exactly a fit for the way the Astros play baseball. He's not exactly a Michael Brantley type, a contact type of hitter first. Michael Conforto is more of a power hitter, especially showed that a little bit towards the end of his last season he played, which, by the way, was about a year and a half ago now. He got the qualifying offer from the Mets, didn't play at all last year, and we'll see where he latches on. But the Astros, I don't think, are a great fit for Conforto. I think he needs to go somewhere where he can get probably 400 to 500 at bats this year and rebuild some of that free agent value. Maybe he signs a 2-year deal with a team like the Guardians, who could always use some outfield help. Mariners adding to their bullpen, Trevor Gott, 1-year deal. There's the Pirates in their negotiations with Kyle Gibson, who's 35, found a little something when he went to Texas. Didn't exactly retain that type of performance anyway when he went to Philadelphia. Was more of a 4th, 5th starter there. However, going to Pittsburgh gives him another good, solid veteran who knows how to play the game. That would be good. 2 great signings anyway for a Pittsburgh Pirates team that's going to have a lot of young guys coming up over the next year. Bringing in a guy like Carlos Santana and Kyle Gibson without giving up big money to be able to do so, great options for their club. There's the Nate Eovaldi and Matt Strahm drawing strong interest. Oop, don't want to click on that one. I already told you guys about that one. Get back down to where we were. My apologies. There's the White Sox Mike Clevenger deal. There was the Dodgers meeting with Justin Verlander. Turning 40 before the next season, so we'll see how he does in his age 40 season. That's pretty much all the headlines that we've had since I was last on the air with you guys. But just kind of want to go over a couple other things. Uh, One is that Cody Bellinger, ever since he was non-tendered by the Los Angeles Dodgers, has drawn significant interest, a little bit more interest anyway than I was expecting. Chicago Cubs seem heavily interested in his market as well as the Toronto Blue Jays. I wonder if the Blue Jays are going to wait for Brandon Nimmo, so maybe Bellinger ends up deciding to sign with the Cubs for whatever money they can end up giving him. If I had to expect what type of a deal, we're probably talking about maybe a 1 or 2 year deal for Bellinger to try to rebuild his value. How much? Probably in the neighborhood of $10+ million. Another player that's in that same kind of a boat that's getting a lot of good interest out there is a guy like Joey Gallo. Now, for him, he needs to get consistent at bats. He does not need to be in a situation where he's going to be platooned, only allowed to face right-handers, and even then, he's not going to play every single time there's a right-hander on the mound. That's basically the worst case scenario for Joey Gallo. He needs to go to a situation where there's not a lot of pressure on him. He's not expected to hit 40 home runs and hit 350. He's not going to do that. Expecting him to do that is just setting him up for failure. But go to a situation where you can put up some numbers. Teams that need outfield help, like say the Cincinnati Reds, that could put him in their lineup, allow him to play every day, substitute him out when the platoons or when there's a really good lefty on the mound, maybe let him get a day off and build some confidence a little bit, and then go right back out there the next day, but not pull him every single time there's a lefty out there, and allow him to still try to rebuild some of that value, work off some of those strikeout numbers, and try to get the ball back and play a little bit more. The one thing for him is that he's basically been one of the most affected hitters by the shift anyway. That's going away. We'll see how teams defend now that the shift is no longer allowed to be used. Maybe they deploy a different type of shift, but in the outfield instead. Or maybe they call one of their outfielders up to the infield and only deploy 2 outfielders out there. Going up against Joey Gallo, that might actually help their defense, but we'll see how things go. But Joey Gallo needs to be playing every day, but he's getting good interest out there. Reds are probably the best bet as far as fit, but the Rangers could also be a team out there that need help at the left field spot. Any team that needs a corner outfielder could turn to Joey Gallo. He has some experience in center, so if you want to deploy him in center, sure, but I think that might hurt his bat in the long run. So if you're a team in need of some power at the corner, make a call to Joey Gallo. It seems like his market is starting to heat up as well. Got 17 of you guys with us right now. Appreciate that. Thank you guys. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We just broke 950 earlier. Would really like to see if we can get up over that 1,000 mark today or this week sometime soon. I want to see if we can get there before the winter meetings. That would really be helpful. But if we can get there around the winter meetings or close to it, that'd be fantastic. Remember, we'll keep you guys up to date on everything that's happening from the baseball winter meetings. We'll be live for you guys on Sunday at 6 p.m. Give you guys kind of a breakdown of everything that's happening up until the winter meetings and let you guys know what's exactly going on with your favorite players, your favorite teams, those types of things. Let me check one last thing for you guys. Just saw something pop across my screen. One other thing about the trade market that I haven't mentioned yet is that the LA Dodgers have been interested in adding a shortstop this offseason. Central time zone. So 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific, 7 East. 6 p.m. Central. I'll put out a video with that information so you guys don't forget as well. Probably a short little 15-second video. That way you guys don't forget. And anybody else who isn't able to watch us live, watches this back, or isn't able to watch this back, you can at least be updated on when we're going to be live, when the winter meetings happen. As I mentioned, that's just when we're going to start our live. We'll probably go through about 10, maybe 11 o'clock that evening, kind of go through the Hall of Fame era announcement, who gets into the Hall of Fame, and then kind of put some short videos out about that in the evening. Probably not be as polished as I usually am because I'm going to try to get them out as quickly as I can. In case you guys are wondering, the shorts that you see on my feed or on my YouTube channel, sometimes it takes anywhere from one take. Sometimes I do get it right off the bat. Don't trip over my words. But I'm a perfectionist that way sometimes. But with the winter meetings coming, I might be trying to put out that content a little bit quicker so you guys can stay up to date a little bit faster. So make sure you keep your notifications on. The one thing about YouTube is they only allow you to get 3 notifications a day from any YouTube channel. And so if you follow other channels here on YouTube, you may get my notification, you may get somebody else's notification, but make sure you follow us on Twitter and turn your notifications on. The only time I post things on there are when I do post a new video or when I go live. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Whether or not you believe, Twitter is imploding or not, I'm not all about all that stuff going on right now. I'm focusing on trying to build this channel as best as I possibly can. And if you guys want to stay up to date on what's going on with the winter meetings, with the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, make sure you give us a follow on Twitter and hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. And you won't miss any video when we are live or when we do put out a short. You can check those out anytime. And you can check out our video library, check out our playlists, and kind of check out everything that we've had. Been going at this for literally 1 year and 2 days. Just passed our 1-year anniversary on Sunday. And getting very close to our 1,000 subscribers. Less than 50 away now. It's fantastic. Just a little excited about it. But as I was trying to say, the trade market right now is something to also keep an eye on. Free agency is going to be very important, but the trade market could be where we could see some moves happen earlier on in the winter meetings. One name to keep an eye on is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers' Willy Adames, Corbin Burnes, and Brendan Woodruff. If you guys checked out my video about Willy Adames, the Dodgers checking in on his availability, you might have known that the 2024 free agency season, that's going to be the year they have 2 of their aces on as free agents and Willy Adames. The Brewers do not like to spend in free agency. That's been pretty much a set mandate from their organization since their inception. Now, of course, they have a big contract already on their books for basically the next 5-7 years anyway in Christian Yelich. That's a horrible deal. That's not going anywhere. They already have that money sunk. They are not going to be able to sign big level or major league level contracts anyway for all 3 of those all-star level performers. Willy Adames, maybe the Dodgers are able to pry him away for a couple of good prospects. Maybe a Diego Cartaya, since they have Will Smith at catcher already, could be one of the big pieces going back the other way as the Brewers try to diversify their team a little bit. Think back to the Josh Hader trade from last year. They took Josh Hader, 1 asset, and turned him into 4. Now, they didn't keep all 4 of them. Taylor Rogers is already free agent. Dillinson Lamet, they immediately released. He went on to Colorado. But, of course, they still have, I think it's Esteury Ruiz and a prospect as well that they kept out of it. Now they're hoping to do a little bit better, I'd imagine, with a guy like Willy Adames. If the Dodgers were to say get him, Adames probably is going to cost them, I think, $9 million this year, as opposed to a guy like Bogarts or Correa, who will probably cost them in the neighborhood of $25 to $30 million a year as far as salary. Now, if they bring in a guy like Aaron Judge and they need to go after a starting pitcher like Verlander and don't want to spend on Verlander, Judge, and a shortstop, maybe they could turn to a guy like Willy Adames. Now, the starting pitchers, that's the one thing I think the Brewers would rather keep. I think they'd rather try to keep their ace pitchers anyway in Woodruff and Burnes rather than spending their money on a shortstop and then trying to piecemeal their rotation together again. The strength of that Brewers team for the past 5-6 years anyway has been that starting staff, and to lose those pieces out of it would basically be the death knell for their contention anyway. And so I think if they had to pick 2 of the 3 to keep, I think they'd rather keep Woodruff and Burnes. So you could make a call to the Milwaukee Brewers and say, hey, what exactly would it take to get a guy like Willy Adames from you? And maybe you could have a real conversation and try to pry him away. Again, the reason why the Brewers would do it, all 3 are free agents after the 2024 season. So I'm not sure they would sign all 3. I certainly don't think they'll sign all 3. But they could possibly keep 2 of the 3 if they trade away, say, a guy like Willy Adames or Burnes or Woodruff. But if you're in need of a really good cost-controlled player, maybe make a call to the Milwaukee Brewers. Holding strong at 17 viewers. Really appreciate that. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all the likes and the new subscribers we've gained today. We've been kind of on a steady gain over the last few days anyway, gaining 2 or 3 every single day. But really do appreciate all of you guys who've been sticking around with us. I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for about a year now. And if you guys want to stay up to date, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can check out at the very bottom of the screen. See how it says follow at UpsideSN on Twitter. And make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. Upside Sports Network is the name. Really appreciate all the support. We'll be live with you guys tonight, probably for another hour or so. Try to go through all the other trade possibilities that are out there for as we gear up for the winter meetings. A lot of conversation I expect tonight is going to center around some of the free agents that could sign very soon, like a Nate Eovaldi. We might see Josh Bell's market heat up a little bit more because he's the last really good first base option on the free agent market right now, and the spots are kind of drying up for him. Of course, we could always see him try to hold out and try to get some of the money that was meant for Aaron Judge from some of these other teams and try to cash in a little bit on something like that. But we'll see where Josh Bell ends up. But Nate Eovaldi sounds like he could sign fairly soon. Kyle Gibson sounds like he could sign fairly soon as well. And as far as the shortstops, it sounds like that market will probably take at least until the winter meetings until we see some movement there. I think Judge is going to unclog this market quite a bit. Once he signs, you're going to see some knee-jerk reactions from some other teams that are going to quickly move to other options on their roster. Same thing for Jacob deGrom as far as the starting pitching market. The Mets were expected to bring him back before Turkey Day if they were going to bring him back. We're after Thanksgiving now. We're only a few days away from the winter meetings actually happening, and a lot of the teams that are in his market have to feel emboldened about the possibilities of bringing him back. Why? Because the Mets are trying to move quickly this free agency period. I'm frankly a little bit surprised they either A, haven't moved on completely from deGrom yet, or B, that they haven't already signed him yet. I mean, that tells me a lot as far as where his future lies. I think deGrom is looking more and more likely to leave than stay with the Mets. The Mets were believed to feel very confident in their position about a week ago, but again, that's with Turkey Day coming up. We're now about a week afterward. They didn't get it done before Thanksgiving. We didn't expect anything to happen the rest of that weekend. We're now into the end of the day on Tuesday before the winter meetings, and still no deal. That tells me a lot about where the Mets see themselves, especially the fact that they're still going out there and interviewing guys like having meetings anyway with Senga, with Rodon and Verlander. Tells me that they're trying to line up their backup options should deGrom leave. Tells me we might see deGrom actually in a different uniform come opening day. We touched on a little bit about the Toronto Blue Jays catching situation as far as trade possibilities. One thing we haven't really mentioned is the relief pitchers for the Detroit Tigers. They have a couple of good relief options out there. Remember at the trade deadline we mentioned that Michael Fulmer was just one of the number of relief pitchers that they could move. Well, now we're into the free agency period. There's not a lot of good closer type level pitchers on the market, eighth inning type of guys. Detroit has a few of those options right now, and they're not exactly expected to contend this next season, so they could trade away some of those possibilities. If you're in the need of some back end of the bullpen help, say like the Texas Rangers, if you spend your money in free agency on the starting staff and you have some prospects that don't have a home anymore because your infield's all solved for the next 5-6 years, maybe you trade a guy like Ezekiel Duran to the Tigers in exchange for a back into the bullpen arm. Joe Jimenez is one of the names that's out there from the Tigers as well. Gregory Soto as well, yeah. He would be a great option on any number of teams. I would just wonder how effective he's going to be in a pennant race. He hasn't really had a lot of pressure there because it is Detroit, so kind of take everything with a grain of salt. As good as he is there, Toronto was the team that did pick off Michael Fulmer from the Tigers at the trade deadline, so they are familiar with negotiating with each other. So maybe they'll already have some framework for what it would take to get a guy like Giovanni Soto. Not Giovanni, what's his name? Giovanni Soto was the catcher that I'm thinking of. I don't know why I keep thinking about him, but Soto to Toronto would be a very good option for them. We haven't talked a lot about the Boston Red Sox, but they have a lot of young, power-hitting, left-handed hitters that haven't really found a home yet in the majors. Bobby Dahlbach is one of those hitters. maybe a team tries to pry him away and try to get that talent out of him. Teams that could take advantage of that type of situation. The Pirates, they've already solved their first base spot, but maybe they try to move him elsewhere. Other teams that could use him, the Cincinnati Reds, of course, are in a rebuilding spot, could give him all kinds of at-bats. Meanwhile, the Red Sox could get a starting pitcher back in return, maybe a bullpen arm out of the Reds as well. Gregory Soto, there you go. Thank you. I don't know why I kept thinking Giovanni. I think I was thinking of the Cubs' former catcher. Speaking of catchers, anyway, the top catcher on the market, both free agent and trade, anyway, is going to be Sean Murphy. He's still under contract, I believe, for another couple of years. Has very good offensive skills and a very good defensive catcher. However, the Oakland A's are looking to turn their team over to Shea Langeliers and this young group of prospects that they just acquired in the last couple of years with the Matt Olson trade, among others. And so they're looking to move Sean Murphy. They should be able to get a healthy amount of prospects in return, some good blue chippers in return as well. Because of that club control, teams that could use him. Well, we've already been seeing a lot of headlines connecting him with the Tampa Bay Rays. Mike Zunino is no longer their catcher there. He is a free agent this offseason. He was injured the majority of last season as well. We thought we might see Sean Murphy traded at the deadline there, or a Wilson Contreras, or maybe even traded him at the Rule 5 deadline a couple of weeks ago. But he's still in Oakland, hasn't gotten traded yet. We'll see where he ends up going, but he should be a force of nature wherever he goes. New York Mets also need a catcher. I think he would be a great fit there. The Mets need to improve their offense, not just from the perspective of third base, etc., but they need to add some talent behind the dish. And bringing in a guy like Sean Murphy would solve that position for a couple of years at least, as well as being able to work with a very good, very veteran pitching staff. Bringing in a guy like Wilson Contreras, well, he's great on offense, does not exactly handle a pitching staff very well. That was the reason why the Houston Astros were a little hesitant, or at least their GM was at the time, why they were hesitant to bring him in. He is a little bit better with the bat than he is the glove, a negative as far as defensive runs saved. Whether or not you believe in the stat or not, it's basically the fact that he's not as good on the defensive end. He doesn't handle pitching staffs very well, doesn't know how to pitch sequence, doesn't build a rapport as well with pitchers on the Chicago Cubs staff, and maybe that has something to do with how good the starting staff is there to begin with. But Sean Murphy is the better all-around catcher. We should see his resolution, hopefully, around the winter meetings. He's probably going to be the one trade that we can expect at the winter meetings. Rays speaking to DeGrom's camp. Well, they've been a little bit surprising in the players they've been talking to. They're not exactly the same old Rays in the fact that, remember Freddie Freeman's market last year when he was talking with the LA Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves? Everybody thought it was between those two teams. Guess what the Tampa Bay Rays' final offer was to Freddie Freeman? 6 years, $150 million. By the way, that's the contract he signed with the LA Dodgers. They've been doing some very un-Tampa Bay Ray type of things over the last couple of years. That would again fit that same very un-Tampa Bay Ray type of thing. I don't think they'll get DeGrom, but it's surprising to see them even be linked to him because of the cost it would be to bring him in. And it's only one starting pitcher. They like to bullpen games and pull their starters early. DeGrom's pretty much been a workhorse his entire career. He pitches deep into games, something that maybe the Rays see that they don't have and want to take the advantage of there. Maybe that's the next trend in Major League Baseball. The Rays always seem to be ahead of the curve when that kind of thing comes about. So maybe it's going back to starting pitchers who pitch 6, 7, 8 innings into games. I mean, we saw a whole year of that with Sandy Alcantara last year. Maybe that's the next in vogue thing. Would the Rays be able to keep DeGrom healthy? I don't know. The Rays have been a little spotty here and there as far as keeping players healthy. Their own players, anyway. Zunino this past year, they're starting pitching anyway. What is his name? McClanahan in years past. But they certainly do seem to know their pitching staff. Remember, John Daniels is now there as a senior advisor, so maybe that's part of the impetus, driving up the price for DeGrom to stick it to his former team, the Texas Rangers. Maybe that's all it was. We talked a little bit about Brian Reynolds as a trade possibility. I don't see it, but I think Brian Reynolds will be around at least for the next couple of years in Pittsburgh. I don't think they end up trading him. I think they're going to end up holding on to him as long as they can, unless they're overwhelmed with the trade package. Say that, you know, the part of the Yankees spinning out of control. If they lose Aaron Judge, they try to go out there and make an aggressive move for a guy like Brian Reynolds, and they offer up Volpe and bring in a guy like Correa to solve the shortstop spot, and go a little cheaper in the outfield by bringing in Reynolds. Maybe that's one way they go. I don't know, but we could see all kinds of crazy things if the Yankees anyway don't bring back Aaron Judge. Speaking of the Yankees, anyway, as I mentioned, they're probably going to have to move one of their middle infielders. Gleyber Torres is probably the most likely to be moved out of that group. Don't expect him to be moved to the Miami Marlins. He's been offered to for Pablo Lopez before. The Marlins, while they like Gleyber Torres, are not going to deal Pablo Lopez in a Gleyber Torres trade. They want to get more than that out of the Yankees system, so we'll see if something happens there. We already mentioned the Jesse Winker deal. That will likely happen at some point over the next month. And as far as the Jays catching situation, again, my preference would be to trade Kirk, and I know he's a fan favorite, but he's going to take up that DH spot eventually, and that's going to cause you a big logjam for Vladdy and Kirk to both need time at DH and not be able to put both of them there and be a liability, if you will, in the field as they get older. Let's just update this page and see if anything new has happened since we started this live. Nope, nothing major. There's the information from the Mets about their backup plans with Rodon, Verlander, and Senga, should they not be able to keep Jacob deGrom. Of course, we heard Mattingly was going to be the bench coach for Toronto Blue Jays. We were speaking about the Hall of Fame earlier, anyway, and how a lot of the players that are on the era committee ballot have some type of negative type of issue with them. However, there are 3 that are on the ballot that deserve some real consideration. Don Mattingly, we mentioned, had a shortened career because of injuries. They also explained he also wanted to spend some time with his family because of those injuries. He wanted to spend some time with his kids, more specifically. You guys can check out that information on the New York Post there. Can the Rays keep deGrom healthy? We already talked about that one. How about Devers? Do you think Boston trades him? I don't think they trade him, although I think they probably should. I think there's a very real possibility the Yankees, if they lose Judge, Cashman's out. They try to steal Devers away. If they do, because Donaldson will be a free agent, they'll have all of that money free. They'll have the Judge money that they had tied up free. They could be a serious suitor for Rafael Devers. And while I don't think they're going to keep Xander Bogaerts around, I don't think it's exactly a winning situation for the Red Sox this year. Not exactly a case that the Red Sox want to make, like, hey, we've got a great future. You should stick around in Boston. No, the Dodgers don't exactly have a solution at third base as of now. They could be a suitor for Rafael Devers. The Rangers have all kinds of money this offseason. Say they decide to move Josh Young to left field, they could bring in Rafael Devers. The Giants have a lot of money freed up. Evan Longoria is a free agent. If they don't spend all of it this offseason, they could save some of it for Rafael Devers next year. A lot of these big pocket teams are going to be very interested in his services. He should get a very nice contract next year. We'll see if it's one of the biggest for third baseman ever. But for the Red Sox, they're in a tough spot. They backed themselves into the corner with the Xander Bogart sweepstakes. They never really respected him in their contract negotiations. Didn't sound like they really wanted to keep him after they signed Trevor Story to that deal either. They tried disingenuously to negotiate with him during the season. Xander Bogaerts basically waved him off and said, "Nah, we ain't starting that," especially after the way they treated him before the season began. And then, of course, I think they should have dealt him, or Xander Bogaerts is who I'm speaking of anyway. I thought they should have dealt him 2 years ago. For me, if you don't think you're going to keep the asset of a player of his caliber, if you're a team that's looking at a situation where like a Brian Reynolds, where if you're not hoping to keep him around after that 2 years is up, you need to reinvest that equity, that talent somewhere else. So if that means trading it for prospects or trading it for another major leaguer with a longer term deal or reinvesting it to try to solve some issues on a club that you're trying to make the World Series on, that's what you do. Now, if you're not able to do that, you absolutely have to get that contract signed before they reach free agency. Because once they reach free agency, you're telling me draft pick compensation is going to be enough for the Boston Red Sox if they lose a guy like Rafael Devers? No. Not going to be nearly enough compensation if they lose him just outright in free agency. And that's kind of the one flaw I see in the Red Sox holding on to him right now, is I don't think they're going to be able to convince him to stay as far as sign the extension before the season. And once the season begins, they're not making the postseason as far as I can see, unless they make some big moves this offseason. But they're going to have to do something to try to convince him. Just like the the LA Angels are trying to pull out all the stops to try to keep Shohei Ohtani, I think in a failed attempt to try to keep him. The Red Sox, I think, are going to try to do something similar this offseason to try to keep Devers in Boston. Just going to check a couple of things. No new headlines as of yet. One other site that I've been telling you guys about is baseballtradevalues.com. Now that we've touched on some of the names that are out there, what exactly would be a legitimate trade for some of these pieces? Some trades are a little tougher to work out than others, like an Alejandro Kirk anyway for the Toronto Blue Jays anyway would be a tough piece to try to trade, but I think he's the piece that should go from the Blue Jays lineup. I think they should go with the young guy and keep the defensive guy, Danny Jansen, who does still swing a good stick. He does have some pop, does hit a home run every now and again. So all is not lost offensively if you get rid of Kirk, at least behind the dish. But I think they should reinvest that asset. Can you make a trade for Ian Happ and the Yankees? Okay. Again, as I was saying, this is baseballtradevalues.com. If you guys are curious about what a trade would actually look like for something like this, you guys need to check it out. So go ahead and head over to the site. Let's go ahead and refresh it just to get this site back and up and going again. Use our trade simulator. We're going to do a two-team trade. We're going to do the Cubs on one side and the Yankees on the other. You can sort by median, which basically tells you, the value of a player, etc. Horner is their most valuable asset right now. There's Ian Happ. He's got 1 year left of control. Very good value as far as field value, and his contract is only 10.6. So going to a team like the Yankees would make sense whether or not they bring back Aaron Judge or not. So his total value, about 14. Okay? So if you're a Yankees team, what exactly would it take to bring in a guy like Ian Happ? Well, let's look at the guys around 14. You're looking at probably a bullpen arm like Loizinga, maybe a couple prospects. If I'm the Cubs, I probably want one prospect and a major league piece back in return. So I would probably be in the neighborhood of, I wouldn't want a 1 year deal back, That's for sure. Montas didn't really work out. Cubs do need some rotation help. Maybe you trade Montas and a prospect to the Cubs. That could make some sense. You did trade a lot of good prospects in the deal to get Montas there, though, so I'm not sure you want to give up on that type of deal so quickly. Gleyber Torres, we mentioned, he was the prospect that the Cubs traded away in that Aroldis Chapman deal years ago. Maybe you send him back the other way. Horner is your shortstop or Torres, and then you put one or the other at second base and kind of go with that middle infield, and then you go with a prospect up at the top. Maybe like a Jones, something like that. But it's not going to cost you a Peraza or a Volpe or a Dominguez, something like that. But just to kind of make our trade here, I would probably go. If I'm the Cubs, I would listen on a Montas type of a deal. And then maybe a prospect, maybe a Warren. Beater was the guy you just got from the Dodgers. Maybe you turn around and flip him. Maybe you add, one of these bullpen options to give the Cubs a better bullpen. Or maybe you just go both major leaguers and clear some active roster spots up. Say you do 2 major leaguers off your roster to clear off some money. Torres is only making, about $10 million this year? $12 million, somewhere in there? $9 million? And then Montas making another 7. So it'd save you $17 million in salary, whereas Hap's making 10, so it'd save you a net of $7 million. And you bring in a center fielder, good contact hitter in Ian Happ. That could make some sense. Just to kind of show you guys the trade. Validate. Trade accepted. You get out of Torres at second base. LeMahieu takes over there full time. Montas, who didn't really work out in New York, you kind of move on from that. You still have to bring in at least 2 starters, possibly 3 if you get rid of Montas, though. Remember, Tyone is a free agent for the Yankees. Let's do another one. Let's clear that one. Let's say we're the Mariners, and we want to trade Jesse Winker. Let me pull him up. Not a lot of value. So which team would we want to trade him to? You got to find him a home somewhere in the outfield. Send him back to the Reds, maybe. Let's say since I'm a Ranger fan, we'll put him on the Rangers. What would be a good deal? Something low cost here that could work for the Mariners as well. Remember, it's about a $9 million contract you're bringing on as well. So maybe you trade them an outfield prospect like a Thompson. Remember, the Rangers still have Mitch Garver on their roster as well. He was out for pretty much the entire second half because of an injury. Rangers are hoping to get back that offense. They're going to have probably a catching tandem of Heim and Garver with Sam Huff in the major leagues as well, trying to get some time. Maybe they get a low-end starter like a Glenn Otto. They just brought in Cooper Hummel as a catcher outfield option. Cole Ragans, their first-round pick, has a little bit more value here at 6.4. Maybe you do something like that, and then if you're the Rangers, you flip this around and try to offload a little bit of bad salary, like Miller, who's been on the Mariners before, could be a utility player for them. Something like that could make some sense. Let's clear it and do another one. You guys give me an idea. What trade would you like to work out? We've done the Miami Marlins one before with Pablo Lopez. I've heard Dylan Carlson's name out there in rumors. The one that was mentioned this morning, a Corbin Burnes trade. Okay, let's do the Brewers. Where should we send him? Where should we send Corbin Burnes? Well, the Dodgers are known to be interested in Willy Adames. They're going to have to add to the rotation. Yankees are going to have to add to the rotation. Mets are going to have to add to their rotation. So those are the teams I'd probably expect to be in there. Let's say the Dodgers, just because they have the prospects to get it done. Corbin Burnes, 78.3 total value. Let's send him to the Dodgers. That adds to their rotation. You're probably going to have to include Cartaya. If you don't want to include Cartaya, then you're probably going to have to include a guy like Lux. Maybe a Bush. I don't think they really want to trade Bush. He's kind of a younger version of Lux with more control. I think if they had to pick between the two, they'd rather trade Lux. You're not trading away Urias. He's got 1 year left on his deal anyway, but he's going to be a big free agent next year. Maybe this will give you some insurance. Phillips was very good out of the bullpen. Let's start at the top. Let's say we put in there Gavin Lux as our headlining piece because we want to hang on to Cartaya and our prospects. Okay? Or let's say we really splurge on the Brewers. Say we're the Dodgers and we just got Aaron Judge. We want to really go for it. We put in Cartaya, Lux, Bush, and really push our chips to the center. We go to the Brewers again and we try to get Adames as well. Even with the Dodgers including 3 of their top players and prospects. Not exactly even as of yet. So they'd still have to add some pieces in there. Brewers are going to need some bullpen help, so maybe put in Vesia. Something like that. Brewers would save a little bit of money. They already have enough money invested in their outfield. They don't need a guy like Taylor. But maybe you could convince them to take a guy like Max Muncy. Could be an analytic darling for an analytically driven team. Something like that. Still a lot of value over here for the Brewers. But you're getting 2 all-star level players in return just to see what it would look like. Trade accepted. Do I think you'd get both of them in that type of a deal? Absolutely not, but might as well try if you're trying to really go for it this year if you're a Dodger fan. Let's clear that one off the table. Appreciate all you guys joining us right now. If you haven't already hit that like button, please do so. You guys tell me, what other trades would you like to see? We were talking earlier, one of my videos anyway, that the Rangers have some prospects that they could deal and some back into the rotation type pieces that they could deal as well. So let's kind of look at those real quick. Duran was mentioned as one of them. He has a lot of value still, even though his first year in the majors didn't exactly go great. He still has a lot of power, and there's no home for him in Texas right now. I mean, sure, they could put him in left field, but I don't think you want to use that type of a piece in left. I think you need more of an actual outfielder out in left field, and so you could get a nice piece back for Ezekiel Duran. Another player that's been mentioned in that same video that we put out there was Smith, second base / shortstop / third baseman. He's a very good with the glove, very good contact hitter in the minors. Showed a little bit of pop as well, but in the majors just didn't really have that same success. But again, first taste of the majors. His contract's still pittance. He's got 6 years left to control. If you can get him to play every day or be a part of a platoon somewhere, you could really have something there. So again, the Rangers could move either one of those two. Dane Dunning was another piece that was mentioned that that the Rangers could be trading. Another high value piece, 18.3 in average value anyway. So they have some options. They're not just going to be completely free agency based. Those are some long-term contracts, controllable players that teams definitely fawn over. So if there's a trade candidate out there that the Rangers really want to get in there, say like for some reason the Guardians are like, we don't really want to have Emmanuel Clase, one of the top 5 closers in the game, for whatever reason. I don't think that'll ever happen, but say that the Rangers, who need a closer, need to bring in a guy like that. You package a couple of those pieces together, you bring in Clase back, and now your bullpen looks so much better. You've solved your back into your bullpen, and then you still have the rotation to worry about in free agency. Maybe you invest the pieces that way. Or if you want to go out there in a trade and get a left fielder instead of going in free agency, since there's not a lot of great free agency options out there, Brendan Nimmo, Mitch Haniger are probably the best options out there right now. But maybe you go out there and say, hey, we want to trade for a Winker to solve our issues. Obviously, Winker not nearly the value of any of these pieces, but maybe you work on something like that. Or if you're another outfielder that could be out there, Dylan Carlson from the Cardinals or Newt Barr, something like that. Give the Cardinals Mitch Garver and one of those pieces. That way they have at least one catcher there as a backup plan B option if they don't get Contreras or Vasquez in free agency. Those are the type of moves you could see coming from the Rangers in the coming days. I expect them to try to get one of those pitchers signed at the winter meetings, and then try to pivot to the trade market to try to piece off that piece together, either the left field spot or their catcher or their closer. Excuse me. Appreciate you guys joining us so far. Got 12 of you guys watching right now. Thank you guys for joining us. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and don't miss out on any of the winter meetings coverage that we're going to have for you starting this Sunday. We will be doing lives for you guys every single night. Usually starting about right now is when we usually start our lives for you guys, and try to do our baseball coverage for you guys every single night to update you on what's going on in the majors, tell you what's happening around Major League Baseball, and let you know of headlines, for instance, Jose Abreu signing, etc. Welcome back, Jose. Oh, I've been streaming for about 2 hours. I started really early today. Wanted to get some of these headlines out today and kind of cover those for you guys, and prepare you guys for the winter meetings, let you know what we're going to be doing, how things will be going. So make sure you guys join us for the winter meetings coverage next week, starting Sunday. 6 o'clock is when we'll be starting our live. Go through pretty much the entire evening to probably 10, 11 o'clock that evening. Go through the Hall of Fame Era Committee announcement for who gets into the Hall of Fame. Had a really nice conversation with several of you guys talking about the Hall of Fame Era Committee ballot. 8 players on there. 3 that you don't really have any character concerns. Dale Murphy, Fred McGriff, Don Mattingly. And then you have 5 that have some type of character, PED, etc. type of concern. Albert Bell, Kurt Schilling, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Rafael Palmeiro, all of which had really good careers in the major leagues, but for one reason or another didn't get on the writer's ballot. And we talked a little bit about how a lot of the conversation for the Hall of Fame has been dominated by guys who aren't in there. Pete Rose, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, PED players in general have all dominated the Hall of Fame discussion. The one thing that I find just horrible about this whole thing is that the guys that have already been inducted into the Hall of Fame had great careers. Sandy Koufax, guys that should already be honored in the Hall of Fame, that are in there right now, don't get their due because we're too busy talking about guys who haven't even made it yet. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, etc. And so I think the conversation just finally needs to come to an end so that we can finally honor those type of players. I know Sunday can't get you here fast enough, I agree. I don't know when the U.S. men's national team is going to have their next soccer game. It might be around then as well. Football, of course, is going to go on Sunday. So we'll be watching some of that. As I told you guys, I'll be going to First Monday trade days, kind of a flea market type thing. Big, massive thing. I'll be doing that in the morning to take my mind off of baseball, settle in around 3 o'clock, get myself updated on all things that are happening, try to put together some more slides for you guys so you guys can see some lineups, what they would look like with these new signings that are going to happen during the winter meeting, see if we can get something together like that. But I'm really excited for Sunday. The winter meetings can't get here fast enough. I think we're going to see a very active winter meetings. I think we're going to see a lot of big names come off the board. DeGrom, I expect to sign at the winter meetings. Judge I expect to sign. We could see the dominoes fall quickly behind that as far as the starting rotation anyway, with Rodon and Verlander. Senga could sign with the winter meetings as well. As far as the outfielders, Brendan Nimmo's market's probably going to take a little while, so I'm not sure if he'll sign at the winter meetings, but I'm expecting him to probably last beyond that. This Sunday, I repeat, the winter meetings begin in 5 days. 5. Just had Thanksgiving on Thursday, and we're quickly steamrolling towards the winter meetings. They will take place in San Diego, so expect some late night headlines. So in case you guys aren't staying up till midnight, 1 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, the winter meetings are still going to be going on the West Coast, and that's why you're going to see some late night headlines coming from the majors, or from the winter meetings anyway. You probably won't see a lot of early morning headlines, but make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll make sure you guys stay up to date, so that way you don't have to stay up through all hours of the night on what's happening, but we should see some very interesting things happen. San Diego was very active the last time the winter meetings were held there, and we should have another great year for that as well. Welcome in, Rob. Appreciate you joining us. Tigers looking for an outfielder. Tigers are looking for a lot of different things. One, they could be looking to trade a couple of their relievers that they have at the back end of their bullpen. They still, of course, have Skobal. They were said to have pretty much their entire roster on the trade block at the deadline, so they could go any number of different directions this offseason. Their roster is pretty much locked up right now, though. I think they need to pick a direction that they want to go with. They already have the Javi Baez's of the world on their roster, a good prospect in Riley Green, but I don't think they can sell because you're not going to be able to get anybody to take the money off your hands of Baez. And so I think they need to invest in that team a little bit, try to improve around the edges. You're not going to be able to convince a top-level free agent to come there unless you're willing to spend this year. Not that there's a lot of great options to go with. But I think they should be able to, get some buy low guys, like a Joey Gallo might be a good fit. Cody Bellinger could be a good fit. Mitch Haniger, if he stays healthy, could be a good fit. If the Phillies get one of the shortstops at the winter meetings, I'm going to scream your lungs out. I think you're pretty safe to go ahead and sign up Trey Turner. Go ahead and buy his jersey. I'm pretty much 90% certain Trey Turner is going to be a Philadelphia Philly. Whether it gets done at the winter meetings or not remains to be seen. I think he wants to get his price as high as possible before finally putting pen to paper. But it sounds like it's going to happen. If it doesn't, then you're probably going to get Xander Bogaerts, one of the two. And of course, all questions will be about Bryce Harper and when he gets healthy. Will they have enough to be able to stay healthy or stay in contention while he's out recovering from his surgery, etc.? Got a lot of Philadelphia fans that have joined our group over the last few weeks. David, he's one of them that watches us every now and again. I'm not sure if he's been since the off season, but if you're out there watching, we appreciate all of our new subscribers. Rob, if you want to hit that subscribe button, we'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the winter meetings. We cover every single major league team, from the bottom of the barrel, teams that are not exactly in contention, like the Pirates, the Reds, the Marlins, etc., the Royals even, all the way up to the very creme de la creme, and the Houston Astros, the LA Dodgers, the Mets, the Braves, the Yankees. We'll let you know whatever happens. Haven't touched a lot on the Braves since we started this video. The Atlanta Braves are expected to try to keep Dansby Swanson around. The price, according to reports right now, it seems like it might be getting a little bit high for the Braves, getting a little bit uncomfortable for them. But at that point, maybe they go with, just a, hey, take it or leave it type offer to Dansby Swanson. This is as much as we can give you. If not, we're going to go ahead and roll with Grissom and invest our money elsewhere. Maybe we could see something like that happen at the winter meetings. Maybe the Braves pivoting quickly to, the Matt Olson of this year's trade market. Correa to the Phillies would be a shocker. Not going to lie, Correa was my first choice. Correa is a very good option. I know Clay, I'm not sure if he's watching either, but one of our subscribers, Clay, was in our chat the other day. He basically thought Correa was the best shortstop of this class. I'm in the Trey Turner camp, but there's 4 really good shortstops. You can't go wrong with any of them. And the Phillies, I think, are probably a leg up on the rest of the competition when it comes to Turner and Bogaerts. But Correa would be a good fit there as well. News out of the NFL, Von Miller says Odell Beckham Jr. will visit with Buffalo on Friday. So for those of you curious about where Odell Beckham Jr. is going to go, looks like his sweepstakes could be wrapping up here in the next week as well. Cowboys are now considered the heavy favorites to sign him. I would say the Bills probably second, Chiefs third, 49ers four, and then the Giants, who were in that conversation at Thanksgiving, got manhandled anyway by the Cowboys in that game. You saw the deficiencies of the Giants when it mattered most, and they've kind of fallen by the wayside, at least in the conversation for bringing in Odell Beckham Jr. You don't see the Braves making any major moves. Well, they've already made some moves around the periphery, bringing in Nick Anderson from the Rays. They made the trade with the Rangers to send out Jake Odorizzi to save some money and get a swingman type, sixth starter, if you will, and Colby Allard that they can put in the minor leagues that won't cost them anything. They're trying to save as much money as they can to bring back Dansby Swanson. The trade for Danny Santana from the Rangers as well, a good move for them. Low cost option to improve that bullpen. Of course, they lost Kenley Jansen. I don't think they're going to bring him back. They made the trade for Raisel Iglesias from the LA Angels last year. Signed a big money deal with the Angels, and they were able to eat the entirety of that contract, is why it didn't cost them a whole lot in return. How about them Eagles? They don't follow football. They're pretty hot. Well, they finally showed me something last week. You can check out my video I put out on Tuesday, I think. Monday or... No. It was yesterday. Today is Tuesday. Getting my days mixed up. I put that video out about how the Philadelphia kind of showed me something against the Green Bay Packers. While their defense did give up a whole bunch of points, their offense finally looked like they were learning from their mistakes, adapting to their competition, learning of different ways to win. And for the first time, I think Philadelphia really has a chance to go all the way this year. The Cowboys have the better defense, I believe. If they get Odell Beckham Jr., an argument could be made that the consistency of both sides of the ball for the Cowboys could lead them to beat the Eagles in the playoffs. But the Eagles right now, the injury to C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a little worrying for them. See if he's out for one game, multiple games, or the season. We'll see. But he's right now going to miss a little bit of time, it sounds like. But that's kind of your Braves update. That they're still trying to focus on Dansby Swanson. They could add another starter in that rotation now that they've sent out Jake Odorizzi. I don't know. There's a lot of things the Braves could do this offseason if they lose out on Dansby Swanson. None of it's really clear, but if they get Dansby Swanson, I think that's pretty much it for their shopping. Haven't touched too much on the Marlins. Of course, the Pablo Lopez thing is probably the most relevant thing for them. But they've invested around the periphery in the past. They brought in Garcia from the Brewers last year. They brought in Soler, World Series MVP for the Braves a year ago. Didn't have a great first year there, though. They have a great rotation. Bullpen, they've traded away some good pieces back there. But the Marlins could be a team to keep an eye out for some of these buy low candidates. They don't really have anything going in their outfield, so they could bring in a guy like Gallo to resurrect his career. Wouldn't be my first choice, but we've seen stranger things. Royals have been linked to bringing back Zach Greinke on a one-year deal. He is probably going to be a GM once he's done with his playing days. He's been involved in pretty much every single draft, trade discussion, etc., on every team he's been in for the past 15 years, it seems like. But it seems like he wants to stick around, play one more year. Titans are doing good. I mean, they're the Titans. They're very well coached. Derrick Henry, their defense is solid, but they don't really have a home run hitter besides Derrick Henry, and that's kind of their downfall. Eagles should be able to handle them pretty easily. But if you guys have a question, where do you think your favorite player is going to go? Let us know. Just going to double check and see if anything else is broken in the last few minutes. Doesn't look like it. Let's check in on this article from Ken Rosenthal that he just put out. The latest rumblings. Looks like he believes the Padres are going to try to do something big this year. Of course, they were in on Jose Abreu, didn't get that done. That was almost a $20 million a year contract. They got to, of course, try to sign Juan Soto to that multi-year deal, and after that big trade that cost them the majority of their top prospects and their top young players. He's got like, what, 1 year left on his deal. There's not a lot of value there. He's got more value to play with the Phillies than to lose him via trade. He's not going to bring you a big return. I mean, the first base market isn't exactly great now that Abreu's off of it. Josh Bell is the last good one out there. Rizzo's already signed with the Yankees. I mean, who exactly is going to make a bid on him? The Padres? I mean, they could use a first baseman, don't get me wrong, but I think there's other choices for them at first base rather than going with Rhys Hoskins. Of course, they're going to move Fernando Tatis Jr. to the outfield, barring a trade. You can check out that video as well, if they decide to use him as a surprise trade candidate and rebuild their organization a little bit, if they're tired of his antics off the field and injury issues. Looks like the Cardinals, of course, are adding an everyday catcher their top priority. Looks like they view Tommy Edman as a very good shortstop, so that doesn't necessarily take them out of the market for a shortstop, but sounds like they're at least comfortable sticking with what they've got. That's funny. Jerry Dipoto tells reporters that what preference would be to land a shortstop who's willing to play second base, but considering the prices that they might go for a guy like Colton Wong instead. Not sure if I would do that. Colton Wong, nice piece, but on the other hand, I wouldn't exactly spend $25-30 million on a shortstop, have him play second base, especially when my shortstop is J.P. Crawford. I might move J.P. Crawford to second. There's the note on the Rays touching base with Jacob deGrom. And that's at least all the latest from Ken Rosenthal. Still the best in the business anyway. That's kind of where we stand right now. If you guys have any questions, we'll stick with you guys for probably another half hour or so. Let us know if any questions you have, any fantasy football advice you guys need, whatever the case may be. Again, we'll be live with you guys on Sunday at 6 o'clock, bringing you guys all the latest from Major League Baseball's winter meetings. Who do you guys think is going to get into the Hall of Fame? Do you think anybody gets elected from the era committee of those 8? See if they have the list of players on here. You keep checking Twitter every 5 minutes. I do pretty much the same thing. If I'm not live, I pretty much am sitting there on Twitter, or I'm reading headlines, or doing some research on a player, something like that. At least when I'm not working my 9 to 5. Luckily, I'm off today, so that's why I was able to start my live earlier with you guys today. And then I'm off the entire week, at least through Friday anyway. During the winter meetings, I'll be live with you guys repeatedly on that day, or during that week anyway. See if this list has it. There's your list of players that are on the ballot. All right, you guys tell me, of that group, who do you think gets in? Okay, interesting headline from Scott Boras and AJ Preller. Apparently, AJ Preller, the GM of the Padres, has asked Xander Bogaerts' agent, Scott Boras, if he'd be willing to play other positions, other infield positions, to be more specific. Sources say Preller fancies Trey Turner as well. Really? Well, we heard right after the trade deadline, maybe a dark horse candidate for Trey Turner would be the San Diego Padres. I think that's a few leaps from something that could actually happen. But Xander Bogaerts might be a very interesting candidate. Maybe that's the splashy move that Preller makes this year. But Donnie Baseball is your pick, Jose. Here's the players I would elect out of that group to the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, get that conversation over with. Check out earlier in the video if you want to hear all the explanation as to why. The gist of it's this. I'm sick and tired of hearing every single year Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and how they're not in the Hall of Fame. Are they worthy? Are they not? Should they have an asterisk? Should they not? Their harm they had on the game, all those kinds of things. The point is, the actual Hall of Famers who are already in the Hall of Fame and the players who are on the ballot other than the PED guys are getting zero coverage as to whether or not they should be in the Hall of Fame as well. The conversation needs to end. The Major League Baseball as a whole needs to turn the page from that steroid era and say, yes, acknowledge it. Let us know it happened. Put it in the Hall of Fame. Put a note there that says, hey, this was part of the PED era in baseball. We knew there was a problem. We let it happen. We will never let this dark day happen again. And they are in because of what they did during that dark era of baseball, if you will. Then you let the rest of the Hall of Fame get their due. Let the Sandy Koufaxes and the Tom Seavers and the Nolan Ryans and the Joe Morgans and all those other Hall of Famers have their day. And then let these other players, who year after year don't get nearly the headlines that a Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens do, finally get their day in the sun and finally be judged for their accomplishments. You let those guys in, then you say, hey, the classic example of a player who's not been in the Hall of Fame because of what Bonds and Clemens, the discussion around them has caused them to not allow these players to get into the Hall of Fame. Fred McGriff is that guy who was most impacted by the home run boom, if you will, during the steroid era. Great player, consistent player, one of the Major League Baseball's best players. I would love to see Fred McGriff get in. You wouldn't mind seeing the Jays move Bichette to second base and acquiring another shortstop? Highly unlikely, though. I think Bichette is probably one of the most, if not the absolute most valuable shortstops in the game right now. Just because of his contract, where he plays, or the contract situation that he has, the impact that he has in that lineup, the versatility that he brings offensively, the speed that he brings on the base paths. I think moving him over to second base only diminishes that asset. And acquiring a shortstop, I imagine you're bringing in a guy like Turner, Correa, something like that. I think that would be great, sure, but I think it'd be much better for you guys to keep Bichette at shortstop and move one of those other guys over to second base, or go for something else, another option at second. But to kind of wrap up the conversation on the Hall of Fame, I would elect Fred McGriff for sure. As I mentioned, I'd put Bonds and Clemens in. I already told you Kurt Schilling is a Hall of Famer. The only reason he's not in is because of the uh, Twitter stuff, the all those issues that people have with him. He was a Hall of Famer when he played. I mean, period. The big game performances that he had time and time and time and time again for the Diamondbacks, for the Phillies, for the Red Sox. Great pitcher. If you want a pitcher for one game at any point in baseball history, Kurt Schilling is probably the guy I would want on the mound. One of the most clutch pitchers to ever play the game. Lit Pete Rose back in baseball and then put him in the Hall of Fame. Well, Rob Manfred actually spoke about this and said he's going to be on the permanently ineligible list. He's heard nothing from Pete Rose to help to change his mind on that. And the Hall of Fame takes their cues from Major League Baseball. They're not going to let him in if Major League Baseball is not going to let him in. Well, what about Roberto Alomar? Well, he's already in. There's nothing you can do about that. But Pete Rose, sorry, you're not going to be able to get in. But to kind of wrap up the rest of this conversation, just out of this group, Bonds, Clemens, McGriff, and Schilling we've already discussed. Dale Murphy and Mattingly are probably the most borderline out of that group. I would probably elect Mattingly for sure because of the peak. The one player I'm not sure about, also because of the peak, is Dale Murphy. He didn't play on any good teams. Not that that should be an indictment of whether or not you should be in the Hall of Fame or not. I'm just not sure while he was good enough at the time, I'm not sure his best stacks up against the other best that's already in the Hall of Fame. I could be convinced to make him to put him in, but he's right there on the cusp. But you're not going to get all 8 players to get into the Hall of Fame because of the way the ballot works. The way this committee works, you can actually vote for any number or any of these players. If you want to, you can actually vote for all of these players. And for me, I'm already at 4 that I'm in the Hall of Fame for sure, with Mattingly being 5. Rafi probably has the hardest time getting in. Rafael Palmeiro out of that group along with Albert Bell. Bell, I think, falls in the Hall of Very Good, maybe in the Hall of Fame discussion. Rafi's numbers would probably put him in the Hall of Fame without the PED stuff. With the PED stuff, I think that probably keeps him out. But once you put in Clemens and Bonds, then maybe the next time the committee rolls around, and if Palmeiro's on that list, then he should be in that discussion. But Rafael Palmeiro was a big fan of his when I was a kid. Of course, as a Rangers fan, was very disappointed in the way he answered questions on the Hill, etc. And then actually saw him in the news not too long ago. He was playing he was playing baseball in Latin America. I can't remember where specifically, but at 51 years old or something like that, he was still taking cuts, trying to be a DH for a team. I think it was a Mexican League team, something like that. Sometimes it just never gets out of you. Manny Ramirez is another guy. Once Bonds and Clemens get in, then it becomes much easier to put those type of players in there and say, hey, they were indelible to the game, they were fantastic, but they still had these issues. They were a blight on the game because of these issues. And while they were great players, we still recognize their accomplishments during this period. And whether or not you think they were great before those issues or after or not, then you could make a case for Manny Ramirez. The other case you could make for Manny Ramirez is he was caught twice once when he was 38, once when he was 40 years old, trying to come back from injuries. Not that a player should ever do that for any reason, but it's not like they busted him when he was 25. Now, of course, the entire league, you could make a case that there was a lot of stuff going on in the early parts of his career that maybe he was doing something, but all that we know right now is that he only tested positive and was suspended anyway when he was 38 and 40 years old. Thought I just saw something pop up there. Maybe not. So my group anyway, just to kind of wrap it up, Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, Mattingly, McGriff, and I'd probably leave out Murphy. He would be on the brink for me. But if I was in that room, maybe somebody could convince me to vote for him. But that would be my group to get into the era committee. You met Pete Rose several times. You never guess. Casinos. Makes sense. Well, I guess that headline won't come through for some reason. Anyway, appreciate you guys sticking around with us. Just to kind of give you one last heads up in case you guys haven't been with us the entire time, we'll be live for you guys every single night the rest of the week, starting around 9 o'clock, going through about 10. Just kind of update you guys on everything that's happening, gearing you guys up for the winter meetings. And then we will not be live on Saturday. We'll give you guys a night off and prepare for the winter meetings. It's going to be a travel day for most executives anyway. Same thing for Sunday. Sunday evening, though, 6 o'clock, we will be live for you guys. That's when the winter meetings really get underway. We'll get the Hall of Fame Era Committee ballot results anyway at that time. And we'll see how things go. Looks like the announcement is going to be 5 p.m. Central, so about an hour into our live on Sunday, we will get the announcement of who is actually elected into the Hall of Fame. And then we can get to the business of the offseason. Aaron Judge, Jacob deGrom, Justin Verlander, Carlos Rodon, Mitch Haniger, Brandon Nimmo. Those are the names we'll be focusing on pretty much the majority of the week. Aaron Judge, I'm hoping comes off the board. If I was a betting man, I'd expect probably Tuesday is when we get into an Aaron Judge signing, if I had to put money on a day. The teams are there. They got to know the contract terms. I imagine they'll probably go back and forth a little bit. But once we get Aaron Judge off the board, then we should really see names start to come flying off the board. Just reading a little bit of the interview, Mike Maddox Russo on High Heat today. And you can see a lot of things happening in Texas right now behind the scenes that are boding very well for their future. Bringing in Bruce Bochy, bringing in Mike Maddox to be their pitching coach. They would not have been able to convince those type of names to come to Texas without some level of assurance that they're going to be able to add at least one ace-level pitcher. They did not come to Texas to be able to finish off a rebuild or something like that. They came to be in contention for, at the bare minimum, a wild card spot in this year's postseason. So we'll see who they end up going with as far as the starters, and then how they end up building out the rest of that roster. Mike Maddox, definitely the best pitching coach the Rangers have had since Mike Maddox. They've gone with a bunch of young guys since then, and it hasn't really worked out. And the Rangers hopefully will be able to get all their ducks in a row and get that starting pitcher into Texas. The ballpark nowadays is more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark, so pitchers like Jacob deGrom, who are trying to finish off their Hall of Fame resume, could kind of take off with their swan song act, if you will, as they enter the twilight of their career. If Clemens and Bonds get in, then A-Rod and Manny have to get in. I would say A-Rod absolutely would get in. Manny may or may not. He's a tougher case just because people view busted tests or failed tests and suspensions after the days of the PED steroid era were over as completely more egregious than the other. I couldn't tell you why. I mean, it's the same infraction one way or the other. One guy, it was the gray area of baseball. One guy knew it was wrong and tried to save his career as he was failing, or as his body was beginning to fail him physically, and he was trying to get back healthy again. But Bonds and Clemens, I mean, it's safe to assume they did something, whatever they end up doing, did hurt and tarnish the records of the game. Barry Bonds tarnishing Hank Aaron's record. Barry Bonds tarnishing, was influenced to tarnish those records because of McGwire and Sosa and all those other guys. You think Judge gets 8 and 250, maybe a little more? I think you're way low on that. I think if you're going for 8 years, I think you're probably getting at least 320, maybe 340, maybe 350. But I think Judge is going to get close to 10 years. I know he's asking for 8 right now, and I think with the one way a team could try to outbid the Yankees is just say, hey, we'll give you 10 years at $40 million a year. That's a $400 million contract. That would definitely be something Aaron Judge would have to take seriously, as opposed to the Yankees' offer of what 8 years at 320, I think, or 8 at 300 total. But for me, I still think Judge still ends up back with the Yankees just because of how desperate they have to be to keep him. They really don't have any other alternative. I mean, what's their alternative? Going with Andrew Benintendi as the all-rise superstar level impact bat in the middle of that lineup? I don't think so. I mean, if I were trying to sign Aaron Judge, if I'm a team like the Yankees, I pretty much have to give him whatever he wants at this point. If I'm the Dodgers, I freed up $100 million of my payroll. I can give him $45 million a year over, say, 5 or 8 years. Say you give him a higher AAV to convince him to come to LA and let him get to free agency again at some point. Maybe that's the argument the Dodgers make. If I'm the Giants, there's no way you're going to be able to offer anything less than 8 at 300. I mean, anything less than that, you're not going to be able to pry him away from the Yankees. I think it's probably going to take in the neighborhood of a 9 or 10 year deal to finally be able to get him out of New York. If you're willing to go that far, you might be able to beat the Yankees' offer. That's all I'm saying. PSI Sports Management. I want to say he's a Boris guy, but I can't remember. Hmm. I guess they're very happy to have Aaron Judge. He's the top guy on there. Oh, look who's also on there. Willie Adames. Very happy with their contracts. James Shields years ago with the Padres. Cole Calhoun's. There's the Aaron Judge one. 31. Aaron Judge is 31 years old. Wow. Apparently we just missed a fantastic game in the NBA. Sounds like Luka Doncic just put up 41 points, 12 assists, and 12 rebounds in a great game against the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson missed a potential game-tying three at the buzzer. I think I got that one recorded. I'm going to have to watch that one, at least the final minutes. If he signs for 45 for first 4 years and then 35 for the last 4 years, how does that work for AAV? Well, 4 times 45, that's what, 180? 4 times 35 is what? 140? That's 320 million. 8 for 320. Welcome in. Who's on first? If you might have heard a few minutes ago that we were going over the Ken Rosenthal article that they were actually talking about doing something big and splashy. Well, we just saw that Preller actually was asking Scott Boras, Xander Bogaerts' agent anyway, if he could play other positions other than shortstop, possibly around the infield. And just the fact that Preller even asked the question tells you that they're actually interested in looking for some type of big move, like a splashy type of move, like a Bogaerts. Do I think Bogaerts could go there? I think he's probably going to go to the West Coast. I think Turner goes back to the Phillies. Bogarts is gone from the Red Sox. Nobody else on the East Coast besides maybe outside of the West Coast anyway would be the Cubs and the Braves, who could be interested in the shortstop market. Braves aren't going to be able to play at Bogart's number. Cubs could be there, but I think they're looking at Correa as their plan A and Swanson as their plan B. But I think for Bogarts, it's going to come down to the Dodgers, Giants, and possibly the Padres if they're really that serious. Do I think they could go after him? Absolutely. Do I think they should? No. I think there's other ways that they could improve their team. We'll see, if anything happens with Tatis Jr., if they could move him. Since they're planning on moving him to the outfield, they still need to try to lock up Juan Soto long term after all the capital they gave away to bring him to San Diego. But they got a lot of irons in the fire right now. They need to solve their first base issue. Maybe they move over, somebody over to first base. Maybe Xander Bogaerts they bring in to play second. Who knows? Josh Bell is still a free agent there. But to answer your question, Robert, if he signs 8 for $320, that's about what it would be. At least that was the contract that was expected coming into the offseason. With Aaron Judge being the top free agent on the board, I think it's going to be over that. Especially when you consider the AAVs coming in for Verlander and DeGrom are going to be well north of $40 million as well. Trying to see if we had a list of agents. There we go. But no, it doesn't look like Scott Boras is the agent. Let's refresh our page. Still nothing happening tonight. We should see some more transactions kind of trickle out before the winter meetings. Again, travel day is usually the back half of Saturday and the beginning of Sunday. We should start to see some movement on Sunday night after the Hall of Fame era committee is the ballot is announced as far as who gets into the Hall of Fame. Usually teams try to wait at least an hour or two after that notification as far as who gets into Hall of Fame as a way to kind of honor those players who do get in. If nobody gets in, we could see quickly them make some moves on Sunday evening. Do you think Bogaerts would be willing to switch positions and play third base on a competitive team? Absolutely. I think Xander Bogaerts would still prefer to be a shortstop, but I think he wants the best dollar value that he can get. If that's playing third base for the Dodgers, or for the shortstop for the Dodgers, or third base for the Giants, or whoever, I think he'd be more than willing to go to the highest bidder. But I do think he ends up on either the Giants or Dodgers most likely, with maybe the Phillies. If they don't get Trey Turner done, then he could, of course, be the fallback option there. But it seems like he's going to go to one of those places. Trying to see a way around the luxury tax. Well, the Padres are right at it right now. I mean, they're literally $1 million away from the luxury tax. If they make any move, they're going to blow right past it, and they're expected to spend big as well. They like to do big things. They don't like to nibble around the edges, and they've already spent a lot of money on Suarez, Martinez, etc. to help stockpile that bullpen again, make sure they have that locked up for the next several years, and we'll see how they go. Just want to update the Twitter feed just to see if anything's happening. It's about 9:45 Central. Just kind of wrap up everything here, just kind of run through everything that we've gone over today. Just kind of led the show with Aaron Judge, of course, being the top free agent on the board. Meetings are already been held with the Yankees, Giants, and now the Dodgers. It seems like the big teams are all in the market. Sounds like we could have some resolution, hopefully next week, in his market at the winter meetings. So keep your eyes peeled for that. You guys can join us for live coverage of the winter meetings all throughout next week. We will start live with you guys at 6 o'clock on Sunday. As things happen throughout the week, we will not be live every single minute of that time, but we'll be live immediately after anything big that happens. So we'll put out a short little video. Say like Verlander signs with the Dodgers. We'll immediately put out a 1-minute video. You guys can check out the video if you guys are working. Watch it. Like whatever, comment, however you guys want to do that. After we post that video, we will go live, break down the entire transaction for you. What type of, how many years does Verlander sign for? What's the contract look like? What's the AAV? What's the impact on the luxury tax? What does this look for their starting staff? What does this look for like for the Houston Astros now that they don't have Justin Verlander? What does this look like for the other teams that were interested in Justin Verlander? Those are the types of things we'll be keeping you guys updated on. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can check out at the very bottom of the page here. See how it says subscribe, Upside Sports Network? That's what you want to look for. At the very bottom of this page as well, you should see a subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, and you'll stay up to date on all the latest. If you are not comfortable with YouTube anyway, you're new to it, you're not sure how their notifications work, how will you know when we post a video? YouTube only lets you get 3 notifications a day from anybody that you subscribe to. So if you subscribe to like 8 people, you're not going to get 3 notifications from 8 different people. So that's 24 notifications in a day. No, you're only going to get 3. That's why it's important to hit that follow button on Twitter at UpsideSN. That way, anything that happens that day, anything that happens in Major League Baseball, anytime we post a video, anytime we go live, we will let you guys know there. That way you know when we do post something, you can immediately click the link, check out the video, whatever you want to do, like it, comment, and then, of course, join our live immediately after the news breaks. So make sure you join us for the winter meetings. I'll be live for you guys throughout that week. Got off that entire week. So if you guys want to stay up to date on what's happening with your favorite team, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's very important. Thank you for subscribing. I didn't see the name that subscribed, but thank you very much for hitting that subscribe button. You think Senga is to the Giants is very possible? I would agree as well. I think they need to make some type of a move. They were talking about that again on on MLB Network anyway. I think Senga is going to have a much bigger market, though. I'm not sure if the Giants will be the team that ultimately ends up signing him, because if they don't get Judge, then I think they're going to try to bring back Rodon. They're going to try to add one of the shortstops and add an outfielder like a Haniger as well. That could be the route they go, and maybe Senga would be the odd man out in that type of scenario. I think there are other teams that are going to be very desperate for top-end starting pitching, like the Texas Rangers, like the Mets. The Mariners are also in the mix. The Blue Jays are also in the mix. The Cubs are also in the mix. The Padres are also in the mix. I just think the Giants are going to have too many other irons in the fire to be able to invest in a guy like Senga, especially when he's not a proven commodity in Major League Baseball. If Bogart switches position, you think he'll age well at third? I agree. Do you want Xander to Philly to play third? I mean, they have Alec Boehm there. I mean, would you want Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts? You would blow past the luxury tax, obviously. I would rather just do one of the shortstops and then add to the starting staff if I was Dave Dombrowski of the Phillies. I would go for Chris Bassett as my number 3 starter, possibly. Maybe add a guy like Wade Miley as a number 5. Somebody you could put in the bullpen at certain points of the season as a swing man. That's the route I would go if I was the Phillies. We also touched on the Hall of Fame Era Committee ballot. There are 8 names on that ballot. Albert Bell, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Rafael Palmeiro, Don Mattingly, Fred McGriff, Dale Murphy, and I know I'm missing one. Kurt Schilling, that was the other one I'm missing. That announcement will happen on Sunday at 7 o'clock Central Time. We will be live, as I mentioned, starting at 6, so that will happen while we're on the broadcast, so make sure you join us live for that. I'm hoping we see a lot of inductions here. I want to see finally baseball turn the page on the whole Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens saga. Finally let them in. Let bygones be bygones. Put an asterisk next to them, whatever you have to do. But I'm sick and tired of seeing the Hall of Fame conversation every single year be dominated by players who are on PEDs or not. I'm sorry, there are more important players in Major League Baseball's history than constantly focusing on 2 players that were played during a very dark age of baseball when steroids and PEDs were rampant in the sport. There are other players who had significant careers that need to get some recognition, and finally letting them into the Hall of Fame and just turning the page as a sport would be very important for baseball to finally let happen. But we'll see who ends up getting in for, who I would vote for. Bonds and Clemens, obviously, to finally let them turn the page. Schilling is a Hall of Famer. Don't care about the off-the-field concerns. Baseball, give me one game to start for my life or whatever, I would choose Curt Schilling to be the starter of that game for baseball history. He is that he is that good of a big game pitcher. And then, of course, I would also put in Fred McGriff, Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, maybe. But maybe if I was in that room, maybe you could convince me that Dale Murphy was as well. But those are the people I would vote for to get in. Who do I think will actually get in? Fred McGriff, I think, gets in. I'm not sure if anybody else does. Bohm to first and trade Hoskins. If you could get anything for Hoskins, possibly. I mean, the Padres are probably the one team out there with the biggest need at first base, aside from the Giants. But I don't see any real value coming from trading away Hoskins. I think it'd basically be his best value anyway is on your team, so I would not trade Hoskins. And again, I would rather go pitching route rather than doubling up on two shortstops. I'd still add the shortstop, don't get me wrong, but you still need a number 3 starter, and I wouldn't go cheap at that spot and put Wade Miley as your number 3. Not a good choice if you do that. We touched on a few of the other headlines from around the sport, of course. Carlos Santana signing that one-year $6.725 million deal. Kind of a mentor for the Pittsburgh Pirates position players. Kyle Gibson sounds like he's getting close to an agreement with the Pirates as well. Candelario goes to the Nats. Not sure if that's a great signing because, again, I'd rather have players coming from winning organizations to help mentor young players. The Tigers haven't been a winning organization since Candelario was called up. So we'll see how that works out. Jose Abreu signed that 3-year $58.5 million contract with the Houston Astros. Great signing for them. Really fits the identity of that ball club as well. Contact hitters, etc. I think he was 4th in the majors as far as hits last year as well. So another good get. Reminds me a lot of the Michael Brantley signing years ago. We'll see if they bring back Michael Brantley to play left field as well. Maybe if you do get two shortstops from this market, you do end up trading Bohm for maybe a number 4 starter, something like that. That would make more sense. And of course, the most recent transaction, Shelby Miller signs a 1-year deal with the Dodgers, $1.5 million guarantee. Good back end of the rotation starter option, number 5 starter, swingman out of the bullpen as well. Dodgers adding a little bit of depth. They do need to add multiple pieces like that because their depth is nowhere compared to what it was a few years ago. Mike Clevenger signed the 1-year, $8 million contract with the White Sox to be their number 5 starter. Twins have tried to make multiple offers to free agent shortstop Carlos Correa. They've got a 1-year deal, a 6-year, an 8-year, and a 10-year contract offer on the table for Carlos Correa. Cubs are said to value him the most, but of course the Dodgers and Giants could be in there. Maybe the Yankees, if they lose Judge, could be in there. Who knows? And then as far as the starting pitching market, everything is kind of hinging on Jacob deGrom. We expected that deGrom, if he wanted to go back to the Mets, would probably end up signing before Turkey Day or now after Turkey Day. The Mets were trying to get it done, as well as Brendan Nimmo, to try to get their business done quickly, just like they did last year. Things aren't happening like that so far for them, and we'll see which way they end up going. But it sounds like the teams that are in the running for deGrom are feeling a lot more confident about their chances of bringing him in. Now that we've gotten past Turkey Day, we're 5 days away from the winter meetings. Hopefully we see some movement on the Jacob deGrom front, because once he goes, we could quickly see Justin Verlander sign later on in the day. Similar contract to what deGrom gets, maybe a year less, with a higher AAV, who knows. And then Rodon could move quickly as well, because those teams, say deGrom moves and goes to Texas, that quickly means Verlander likely goes to the Mets to try to fill those shoes, and then Rodon is going to have, the pick of wherever else he wants to go. If the Rangers want to double dip as far as a starter, maybe the Mets want to, really go all out for that starting staff. Maybe the Giants try to bring him back after losing out on Judge. Maybe the Dodgers, need to bring in a starter and they lose out on Verlander because he goes to the Mets, so they go with Rodon. We'll see a lot of dominoes fall quickly once deGrom goes. I do think the Philadelphia Phillies do need to add at least a upper mid-tier starter. Like Chris Bassett, he's not a top-tier starter, but he's a good 2, or he's a good 2, he's a great number 3. So I think he would be a great fit in that division. We saw how it worked out with the Mets last year. Pitched very well for them. However, I think a sneaky team for Chris Bassett could be the San Diego Padres for that connection that he has with Bob Melvin. Nobody speaks higher of Chris Bassett than Bob Melvin, the manager of the Padres. So we'll see if they're ultimately the team that gets him. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Again, we'll be live with you guys pretty much the rest of the week, at least through Friday, from 9 to 10 o'clock. Kind of get you guys updated on everything that happens every single day. We do cover the MLB, NBA, NFL, and the NHL. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Be notified whenever we do post a new video or go live, as we'll keep you guys as updated as we possibly can. Really do appreciate all the support, all the chat we've had today. You wanted Edwin Diaz to be the Phillies closer, but you also wanted Kershaw. Kershaw was never going to happen. Diaz, I think if he had gotten if it didn't work out so well in New York, I think there could have been an argument Diaz could have gotten an even better contract elsewhere. Philadelphia would have been one of those places that could have offered him more money. But I think Diaz was just so comfortable playing in New York. Everything just fits so well there. That entrance that he has, everything just works. And when you're in a situation where you're that comfortable, it's tough to want to leave that. And so, with comparable money, a good fair offer on the table, I think Diaz was more than willing to sign that contract and stay in New York because of how comfortable things were for him there. Signed that 5-year, $102 million contract to stay with the Mets. But really appreciate you guys joining us. Again, if you have any questions, always submit any comment that you have on our video. We do try to read those comments whenever you do post them. James, I know you posted several comments on our videos this week. Really appreciate that, all the support. Kent, if I remember correctly, is another one. Thank you as well. And our moderator, haven't had any issues today, but really appreciate you watching with us, Miss Gwen, and really appreciate all the support you guys give us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, 9 to 10 p.m. Central anyway. And then on Sunday, we'll be live for you guys doing the winter meetings. 6 p.m. We'll probably go through 11 p.m. that evening. So make sure you get your drinks ready. I've got plenty of drinks around me right now, but we'll make sure we have a whole bar ready to go for the winter meetings. Hall of Fame announcement on Sunday as well. Appreciate that, Robert. Thank you very much. And we'll see you guys tomorrow evening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new to us, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you, guys. Oh, I'll try, Jose. Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.